Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hanson, joined by Ben Reeves.
Hello.
Brian Shea.
Hey.
And Jeff Cork.
Hey, buddy.
Never before that I can recall have the four
For
of us
what? For people who are all boys?
who are
on
all
the Game
boys.
Informer show?
No, but this combination of certain boys. I don't think it's ever happened, right? Prove me wrong,
Too
listeners.
hot to handle.
Some say that it's going to be too good. It'll be the new definitive template for the
right.
Game Informer Show moving forward.
That
Sorry,
won't happen.
Internet. Might
Hey.
as well end it now.
That's right. We got a lot to talk about on this show.
Oh, good.
Sure.
First of all,
Yes.
new cover story was just revealed, and it turns out that it was...
Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice.
That's right. We'll explain everything about that game. Then we're also going to talk about Brian Shea's torrid, hot love affair with Yooka-Laylee.
Yeah, we can call it that.
It's going to be fun. Also, Reeves, I want to get your delayed but still very accurate take on Blaster Master Zero.
Oh, accurate. Yeah.
It should be fun on Switch. I played a little bit of Drawn to Death last night on PS4. Shea, you did as well.
I played a match in the training,
What?
and
Perfect.
I have thoughts.
I also have thoughts. It will give you thoughts whether you want them or not. Then we're going to get to some great community questions. I'm actually super excited about these emails. I think it's our best batch ever.
What?
Wow.
Really?
Oh, that's why
I
you got the
sincerely
four of
think
us.
that.
Are they
They
going
call
to
it
get something
teams.
nice?
They're going to get something amazing if they choose or if they have the best email of the week. Then after all that, we talk to Gavin Price, who's the managing director and creative lead on Yooka-Laylee.
Allegedly.
That's right. So he's from Playtonic. And so we talk about going back to the Rare days. He was at Rare back in their N64 heyday. He explains something, and I make him stop and re-explain it because I had no idea that it was a concept. But apparently Rare was experimenting with like hot swapping N64 cartridges because the N64 would store a certain amount of RAM. So you could theoretically carry and transfer data from one game to the other. Like if you had Banjo-Kazooie in there, you could hot swap it with Donkey Kong 64 real quick, and it would carry items over. Really
Sounds
bizarre
insane,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, so he talks about that.
Try that at home, kids.
Yeah, he talks about how Banjo-Kazooie influenced Nintendo with the development of Ocarina of Time, which I also didn't realize. And then he talks about Yooka-Laylee and the idea that they're trying to build up a shared Playtonic universe, which naturally leads me to question whether or not there's going to be a sequel, and then also try 1,000 different ways to ask if they're going to make a spiritual successor to Perfect Dark, which I think the industry is pretty ripe for.
So wait, they would go into other genres, is what you're saying?
Yes, other genres,
Interesting.
but all the same universe.
So-
Another Blast Core?
That's right. It could be the spiritual successor to Blast.
Spiritual Conquer could be cool.
Let's just burn the whole interview here. Just
Hell yeah.
talk about the whole thing.
That's right.
It's going to be a good chat, so stay tuned for that. This entire episode, it kind of is about British spiritual successors, if we need a unifying theme, don't you think?
I think to mark the event, you need to whip out your awesome British accent that you've been working on.
Cork, you and Ben Reeves and I, a couple weeks ago, we went to Cambridge, England, and also London. How was that trip for you?
It was, as they say, delightful.
I've never had more Indian food on a trip than
Well,
when I went to England.
Cork and I are huge Indian food fans, and England knows how to do it right.
Exactly.
It was good Indian food.
Yeah, hit and miss with some
Hit
of
and
them,
miss.
but
Good to mediocre.
yeah. My favorite part of the trip is we were all really loopy because we flew overnight, landed there in the morning, so we were staying up all day
in an airplane.
in an airplane. That's right. And we were in a taxi, really loopy, and driving to Cambridge. And
It's a
the guy,
considerable haul.
it is a haul, and the taxi driver's like, "Oi,"
There you go.
he's like, you know, Isaac Newton is from here.
Yep.
I think that's Australian.
That's exactly how it was.
And then Reeves set him up with, "Oh, is this where he came up with his big idea?" I just like realized halfway through the question he had no idea what the accomplishment Isaac Newton did. But you know, is this where he did that smart stuff he
We'd
did?
been up for a while.
It was loopy.
He
and very
invented
silly.
gravity, just
That's
for people
right.
who don't know.
That's right, and
If-
apples.
Yes.
You're still learning.
Yeah.
and
so-
figs.
Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. This is from Ninja Theory, who you might know from such games as,
Disney Infinity's combat system.
and Brian Chase, such games as,
DMC Devil May Cry.
and Ben Reeves, such games
Heavenly
as,
Sword.
and Enslaved:
you
Odyssey
go.
of the West.
You know them all.
This is their new game. It's an interesting game to talk about because of the game's development. Back in 2014, they started this project where they wanted to self-publish something smaller, something funkier. Is that the broad umbrella we're working with here?
Something that, under the constraints of traditional developer-publisher model, would not be considered economically viable.
Because, as Tamim, the creative director for the game, phrases it, we want to make games that aren't for everyone. This is
right.
this is for a certain audience. Who do you think that audience is for, Reeves?
That's an interesting question. I think it's for people who like experience is, it seems like it's very story focused,
Yes.
which is, I got an even stronger handle on once I played it. Like, because I think DMC and Heavenly Sword, like, as action games and action focused,
Right.
this is less action focused than those. Even though they started off saying this is Heavenly Sword's spiritual successor, it's not going to be what you expect going in if that's all you think about.
100%. That was the big takeaway when I went to the studio as well. I think I went there with you. But I was very much, because this game, it had the vibe, or at least from the outside impression, I had the concept that people were looking forward to it because it would take advantage of Ninja Theory's specialty, which people see as stylish action and combat. And so it's not a Kickstarter game, but it had kind of like a Kickstarter like community vibe. Like, this is the champion of stylish action games coming. And then seeing the game, it's like, oh no, it's not that.
Yeah.
Really.
We did get hands on with the combat, and I think the combat's good. Like, it's solid. It feels right. There's just not a lot of variety to the action. Let's say there's not a like long string of combos or anything.
There's no combos.
And
There's no skill trees. No different weapons. Like, it's very streamlined.
You don't power up as you go,
Right.
and that was all intentional. According to Meme, he says, I grew up playing arcade games, and I like that sort of idea of you learn as you play the game. There's not a lot of tutorial to it.
Right. And even in video interviews, he talks about, like, originally they were more combat focused, and then they just grew more confident throughout the development of, like, let's focus on just making a bold experience overall and rely a little bit more on, I want to say storytelling, but it's not as easy as like, oh, there's a lot of cutscenes in this game. It is experiential.
Right.
I think is the best vibe.
Yeah. And there's things we saw that I'm like, all right, this could be really cool. Like, there was a sequence where it's all played almost entirely in the dark, so you can't really see anything. And we haven't really gone into the story yet, but Senua is a person who's struggling with psychosis, and they actually went and studied up on that and met with a professor at Cambridge to talk about that. And so it's like that sequence where it's all completely dark. She kind of went blind, right? She had a mental blindness is what they called it. So it's like daylight in the world. She just can't see anything. And I'm like, that's a really cool way to approach a level in a game.
Right.
So you're constantly walking through this like dark area. You can vaguely make out shapes, and it's the things that are making sounds are the things you can avoid. So you hear monsters, you hear sort of enemies around you. You just can't see them, and so you're trying to avoid them based on the sound.
Yeah, and so the idea of Senua's psychosis, it is all powerful. It's a bizarre vibe when you see an extended portion of this game, and this is a weird comparison, but it kind of. Did you ever guys play Thumper, Cork? I know you did.
Yes.
I know gameplay, zero correlation, but just like that overwhelming intensity vibe that Thumper would sometimes give you. I sometimes felt that way watching a lot of Hellblade, where it's aggressive. There's swirling voices around you at all times. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel really intense. It just has this swirling intensity to the entire experience. Cork, what did you think about like how much they were pushing the fact that she's hearing voices?
It seems like kind of pulling back a little bit the mental illness aspect of it. It seems like they're handling it a lot more maturely than like games have in the past.
It's not Eternal Darkness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's keeping things to like the spectrum of reality. So they consulted with Wellcome Trust, which is kind of a organization in England that deals with people who are dealing with mental illness, and they brought people in to like look at the game during various states of development to kind of put some of their like auditory and visual hallucinations to find ways to incorporate them into the game. And so they could say like, oh, this is not what it's like at all. Actually, it does, like these voices, this is not how they are manifested. And other times it would be like, oh yeah, the way that you've done this weird visual hallucination where the colors are super saturated, this is exactly how sometimes it is. So I think it's a very interesting way of approaching it. I think one of the most interesting things about the trip was just seeing how the team is pretty small and they're very nimble in the way that like things are very flexible in terms of where the game is, and they're playing with like what you might consider larger concepts. Like when we were playing with the combat, there are times where you kind of get you could do like a charge attack, and you could see they're still trying to figure out how to represent things visually. So they're kind of like, this is not exactly a placeholder, but they're like, like there's no UI, for instance.
Yeah.
So finding ways to kind of incorporate visual cues is something they're still like experimenting with.
For like bosses' health and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like they were at one point, they've got a bunch of developer diaries you can see where they were experimenting with like visual cuts and bruises on the enemies, and they're like they've moved away from that. There's kind of a neat thing where they incorporate her mental illness in the gameplay itself. Like she'll hear some of the voices will say, behind you, to indicate that an enemy, rather than just having like an arrow or something on screen showing that someone that is unseen is going to attack you. She'll have that kind of a cue too. So they're doing a lot of clever ways of incorporating it.
Yeah. One thing I think that I noticed a little bit too, and I think it'll be even more striking in the final game, is the camera is all one single cut. It's like with Senua the whole time, like behind her. And I don't think that's entirely new. Like they didn't invent that, but just the way they're using it and the way, especially for a game like this that has a fair amount of story to it, to have one camera that's just on her the whole time, panning around, even through loading screens, is pretty cool. And I think adds a little extra sense of like intimacy to the moment where you kind of feel like you're there on that journey with her, which is what they're going for. Yeah.
And on the storytelling front, I mean, it's impressive how bold they're being, and to me the creative director was big on emphasizing that like we don't want to necessarily hold players' hands through like, hey, step 1, step 2, step 3. It is going to be a little bit of a nebulous story, and just they have faith that players are sophisticated enough these days to be able to piece stuff together. They compared the tone a lot to The Revenant, the DiCaprio film, as far as the intensity. It seems to be a big focus. Also, one of the interesting little side note, if you're really in Ninja Theory's history, you know that like with Enslaved, they worked with Alex Garland, who helped me out. He worked a lot with Danny Boyle, right? So he wrote 28 Days Later and Sunshine. Thank you.
His big thing recently was Ex Machina.
Right. So he went off and made that film Ex Machina, and that was part of an inspiration for Ninja Theory, seeing that like, oh, he went off and did his own thing. Let's do our own thing in the games industry. Let's just make something bold and different and cheaper overall so that we can be more experimental. And so the big takeaway was, some could call it artsy-fartsy, but they are going for a bold experience.
And it's nice because I'll just cut you off here, Ben.
Yeah.
One thing I like about it is it does seem to have a strong creative vision. It doesn't seem, whether or not you like that,
yes,
I think it's almost like True Detective versus a lot of other television programs. The first season, well, even the second season, it could be either way. It had a strong voice, and that could either attract you or repel you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it's being kind of focus tested to death, or it's something where it's like we've done a lot of market research, and we figure that this, as he, talking to Tamim was saying, working with publishers, oftentimes it will be a series of like, you need to have this, you can't have that. If you want to have this, you also have to add that. Yeah. So there isn't like a multiplayer component or leaderboards or any of that other stuff thrown in there. It is like, this is the story we're telling. It isn't going to be 40 hours long. And it isn't going to have, these elements and this elements. Like they're focusing on what they want to do, and they're doing it, which I think is pretty cool.
One thing I like, because he said at one point in the game you like lose your sword, and so it's like for a couple hours there's not going to be any combat, and I'm like, that's kind of a bold choice for an action game.
Yeah,
and I like that, and I like you said, it's a strong artistic vision. They know it's not going to be for everybody, and it will probably turn some people off, but for some people it will be really, I think, a powerful experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like on the trip, I kept thinking in my mind that, like, publishing your own game, it's kind of like working from home. It has some pros and cons, but it seemed like they were very eager for feedback. Like they were watching intently when Reeves was playing for an extended period of time, trying to figure out, like, are these puzzles working out? What works? What doesn't? What maybe repeats too much? What doesn't? And a big part of the game that we saw, at least, was puzzle-ish, where you're like seeing, because a big part of Psychosis is like seeing shapes and patterns and things, as they describe it. And so a big part of the game is seeing these runes, these Norse runes, and then trying to find those in the environment. A little bit, I don't know, some of the stranger parts of The Witness, or what would you compare it to, Reeves?
Yeah, Witness is an interesting comparison. I will say the one thing that I found striking is like tree branches, right? there's one area that we didn't see this in the game, but they've definitely shown it in some of their videos where like the tree branches will line up and you'll see a face in the branches.
Unclear if that's even still in the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. But that's an example of like you're lining up things in the environment. You're finding the position in the environment where those things line up and create an image.
And from what we played, that was more of the game than I expected. Was walking around trying to find those.
An extended demo, and I think that is really cool a couple of times, and then it kind of keeps happening maybe a few more times than it needs to. So I think they're still polishing that up, and hopefully they'll kind of trim up and find the gem in that idea without kind of overstaying their welcome.
Yeah, I think so. And they are real perfectionists over there, if you couldn't tell from their previous work, but like especially visually, they are going through this game with a fine-tooth comb, and it does look really impressive for a game. We don't know the exact budget, but as they pitch it, it's cheaper overall than AAA. But the entire concept of this game, as they see it, is they want it to be indie, but still AAA at the same time. Want it to look good, want it to play well, but still come from an indie, bold, strange vibe.
Well, I think one example of that is they knew their budget was tight, and so they're like, we can model one character super well, and so that's Senua, who's like the main character. And they're like, we're probably not going to add any other characters in the game for her to like talk back and forth to, right? But then they did sort of like some testing on some video shoots, and they incorporated their kind of flashbacks there where she remembers like her talking to somebody else in her life.
Right, there's someone named Druth, and it's actually just live action video, but they filter it so much that even myself, being a video producer, it's like, is that?
Yeah, well, there was a point you asked.
Yeah.
It was like, because you're not quite sure. Like, that's how good the filters are, is like, it actually looks like it belongs in the game because of the video filters, but you're like, is this a real digital person or is this a video?
What am I looking at?
And they're
here?
still polishing it up, so they think they can perfect it to the point where people won't even notice.
Yeah. Cork, any other takeaways?
No, I think it looked really interesting. It was kind of a lot different from what I was expecting. I was expecting stylish action to some degree, running around with a sword, upgrading and getting large combos and everything. This seems like a more solemn tale about a woman kind of seeking redemption,
vengeance.
Yeah.
Fighting against a bunch of Vikings.
Do we want to set up the story? Like what happens basically? No, leave it a mystery, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to be running throughout our month of coverage. So gameformer.com/Hellblade. We are going to be posting features throughout the month. Are there any of you guys are super excited about?
We just had one went up yesterday. Was the 158?
8. We asked 158 questions to the creative director about all of Ninja Theory. There's a lot of DMC questions in there. Enslaved, we poked fun of maybe too much, even though we all love Enslaved.
I like Enslaved. I feel bad about it.
Heavenly Sword. So
it's a goofy ending.
It's always fun to focus on a studio like that. Like Ninja Theory, I guess I've thought about them and liked their work for a while, but then you're sitting in a hotel room. All right, come up with as many questions as you can about this studio. It's fun to take that deep dive.
Another one that I like that's coming up is we do a deep dive on their mocap studio, because they built their own mocap studio. We kind of like give a tour of that and then show how their mocap sessions are quickly translated into the game, because it's almost one-to-one live action sequences, and hopefully that comes together. We tried to do some improv. It's not the best improv ever, but hopefully it gives a good sense of what the game's like.
Yeah, Reeves is in the suit, not in the game, but just to like show off the tech and whatnot. And so I haven't edited it yet, but if it cuts together as well as I think it will, I think that'll be a super fun, bizarre
solid
video.
7.
A solid 7, as some would say. That video in particular. And then also there's going to be new gameplay and stuff, but yeah.
The interesting thing about this game is that most of the time when I read our cover story or like I hear these discussions on the podcast, I'm immediately like, oh, this game is for me or this game's not for me. I am trying to figure out if I'm going to be into this game when it comes out.
What do you think about slowly walking around an environment, lining up runes, and then some sword combat, and just overall intensity and having a bold flavor?
Is there a game like this?
This is Hellblade.
What would you call something like that?
It sounds good, yeah. I just don't know if I'm gonna like the gameplay.
Well, what are you hoping for, and what are you not hoping for?
I want some good, I want good combat sequences. I want a great story. I want like some really cool visual effects, like we've seen in some of their past games. Like, I just think that if all of these elements that like they seem to be striving for come together, it'll be a really cool game and something that's a little bit different from what they've done in the past.
I can guarantee different, and I can guarantee intense.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's an interesting project for sure, and it's a fascinating experiment from the studio.
They didn't call it a horror game, but it has more like horror tendencies than I guess I expected from this game.
Sure.
Even though it's called Hellblade, like it's more like you're saying intense, But there's sequences like this could be straight up in a horror game.
Effed up is a
Yeah.
good way of describing a lot of stuff. Yeah. So GameInformer.com/Hellblade. There we go.
Hey.
Hey, the complete opposite side of British development, Yooka-Laylee.
Some would say also
Similar
effed
themes.
up.
Very effed up. What's with those googly eyes? There is a character that's a trouser snake. I mean,
Yeah,
they
it's a
love
snake
playing with
that sells
Pretty good.
moves, and his name is Trouser.
Also, there's a level called Batship Crazy.
Mm.
So, I mean, if we're talking effed up and intense,
That's
need
very British.
go no further than these British puns.
There's a lot of wordplay like that where it's just like, oh, they're veering close to that adult humor, but nope, it's still ship.
It's still safe. So this is, if you're a fan of Banjo-Kazooie, this game theoretically is for you. Is it for you,
100%.
Brian?
It was for me for the most part. Like, I am someone who, one of my favorite games growing up was Mario 64. I really liked Banjo-Kazooie. Like retro 3D platformers like that. If you like those, this game is very much for you, but be warned that there's also a lot of like kind of archaic design that goes hand in hand with that. Like stuff that maybe should have remained in the N64 era, like the maps. Like I cannot tell you how many times I wandered aimlessly around a map, like just for probably 45 minutes trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do next.
We're not talking about Mass Effect Andromeda until next week, Brian. I'm confused.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But like overall, I think that the game's a lot of fun. I think that there's 5 worlds. You get dumped into the world after you like find it in the hub area, and then you're just kind of like Mario 64. You're free to roam around and complete those missions.
I would draw the distinction between Mario 64 and Rare's 3D platformers. Cork, did you play a lot of these?
A fair amount.
Okay, great. I just feel like Mario 64, there's a certain clarity to that design, whereas Rare's 3D sensibilities on N64 was a little more cluttered.
Barfed up a bunch of power-ups.
That's one way to say it, is barfed up
Collectibles.
collectibles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is very much in that vein. So comparing it too much to Mario 64, I would kind of rebel again.
I was saying kind of like in the way that it dumps you into a world, and then like there's objectives you can complete no matter where you go. Like you go up to the top, and like at the top of this mountain, and there's a little mini game you have to do to get the page that's their version of like the star or whatever it was in Banjo-Kazooie. I can't even remember the notes.
Yeah, the notes. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
So in wandering the environment, I'm trying to figure out, do they replicate that formula too faithfully? It is that, but it turns out that formula has some downsides in 2017.
Is there anything they should have updated?
I think they should have added like an easier to follow like hub world. Like I think like there's one time I think it's going from like the ice world to whatever the next one is. I think it's like a marsh world.
Yeah.
And it just took me like maybe an hour to 2 hours trying to find like what the hell am I supposed to do here? Like how do I reach the next level? Like am I just supposed to stay here and expand this world? But I mean there's only really overall there's only 2 main collectibles. There's pages or pages they're called and quills. So it's all like book themed. And then
it's like the evil guy, at least as it's set up in the beginning, is trying to hold a monopoly on publishing books, and it's a little bit. I got the game publisher analogy vibe. Is that something they carry throughout the entire thing?
There's so many like fourth wall breaking industry jokes, like game industry jokes. Like there's one where you like. I don't want to spoil too deep into it, but like
don't spoil that joke, bro.
You come up onto like the
Keep it
quiz.
fresh.
There's a quiz game show like there is in Banjo-Kazooie. And like the fourth wall breaking moment is, they must have blown all the budget on the boss battles or something like that. Like just little things like that. Or like there's a loading screen that says, if cartridges were still popular, this game would have already loaded. Just
that's funny.
Little
How
things
many
like
times
that.
did you actually laugh out loud?
Like I chuckled like, that's kind of clever.
Brian
Or
Shea,
like,
can we hear your fake laughter? I want to hear what that sounds like. And what does your real laughter sound like?
You've never heard it.
I know. I certainly don't think I have. There it is.
Kind of.
Kinda.
But there's like a joke early on where you're learning to swim, and the bat character, Yooka-Laylee.
Laylee.
Thank you. She's like, hold X to descend, but we've already read the manual. Good old manual humor.
Oh,
everybody.
Yeah.
wow. Manual.
So, as an adult now, Brian, as a sophisticated gentleman, you have stubble on your face. You know the taste of a beer, the swing of a bat.
He knew all these things. He had stubble on his beard when he was 13.
Stubble in my beard.
Is it still a fun game to play, or is it just, this is kind of recapturing what it was like when I was 9?
It's fun, and it is like a recapturing of what it was like back then, but like there are problems. Like I touched on like
Navigation.
navigation's a big one. There are some camera issues, like especially when you get in tight spots, but like so many 3D platformers have that problem.
I think we're all spoiled by Nintendo's 3D platformers, and like especially 3D World in particular, where the camera was not even an obstacle in any way because it's a little more isometric. Like you forget how important camera management is in most 3D platformers like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that this is this like if you look at like Metacritic or OpenCritic and look at like kind of like the scattershot of review scores.
Yeah.
I fully expected that because this is a game that's not really for everyone. Like I think that if you have like it's going to be based on your tolerance for some of these like old school retro designs. Like,
and you gave it what, an 8?
I gave it an 8.
Okay.
And
that's a pretty good score.
It's
I guess I kind of feel like you're saying like, well, it's okay, I guess. I don't feel like the enthusiasm.
No, it's a really good game. Like I really enjoyed it. I just think that there are some things that hold it back. Like it could have been a much better game, and I think that if they addressed some of these issues that were like they're just left over from the N64 design, that I think that they would have, it would, not only would I have scored much higher, or maybe not much higher, but higher, but I would have, like, I think that the scores would be a lot more in line. Like,
yeah. Well, to learn why they made some of the decisions they did, you can check out the interview at the back half of the show with Gavin Price. He talks all about it and what to modernize, what not. Most importantly, how was the Yooka-Laylee Rap?
I actually did not hear the Yooka-Laylee Rap.
Are you kidding me? So this, in Donkey Kong, everyone knows it. It's in Super Smash Bros. Melee. It's an absolute classic from Grant Kirkhope. The DK Rap. Grant Kirkhope apparently was a stretch goal in the Kickstarter. I wasn't aware of this. They actually composed a new rap.
Right. Yeah, they released that separately a couple days ago. I just haven't listened to it.
Would you like to listen to it right now and react live?
I would love nothing more.
Oh my gosh.
Wade in the booth?
Hey man, are you ready for this? Yeah, I was ready 20 years ago. Okay,
hey.
let's do this. Here we go. Oh, it's finally time. Oh, thanks to you.
This is exactly the same rhythm.
It is. DK. Yeah, totally it.
This is like the speed of Eminem's Rap God. Rap slob.
Rap slob, yeah.
Every rap song needs this style breakdown.
How long is this thing?
It's 4 minutes. Sit tight.
Can we loop it for...
I think we're good.
No, we aren't.
I regret the decision I made.
All right.
So this is if they didn't meet the stretch goal? This is what happened?
A threat.
A gun to the puppy's head. We'll fucking do it.
This is just DK Rap.
Well, of course, that's what people want. You can look at the game and say this is just Banjo-Kazooie.
I know. But that's like the same chorus as DK Rap.
It's completely different. There's no relation. Nintendo, look no further.
We do have a feature on Grant Kirkhope that's going up next week where he talks about the rap a little bit more.
Oh, do you know what he says about it?
Well, he says that he didn't know that stretch goal was actually in there. Like, so
and then they came to him the last second to write something.
They told him, like, guess what? We put this in there, and like, oh, now I got to do a rap.
I don't understand.
They do have all these dope rhymes.
Yeah, with the dope rhymes, it sounds like it took 6 months to write this. I don't understand how he was able to turn that around so quick.
I don't think he would have been able to.
He's a professional. Please
okay,
fade this.
I think we're good. Who is this, Danny Elephant lyrics? Come on, Cork.
Danny Elephant?
Yeah, Danny Elephant's lyrics. That's actually a character in Yooka-Laylee.
Oh, good.
He's very popular. Jeff, Cork.
Hey.
Shut up, Ben Reeves.
Hey.
Blaster Master Zero on Switch. Is this another game once people finally finish Zelda, which they shouldn't, that people should check out?
You should never finish Zelda, but...
Speaking of spiritual successors in retro games.
Yeah, no joke. It kind of flew under my radar a little bit. I think it's okay. So take that with you. If you have an appreciation for the original Blaster Master,
what is the original Blaster Master?
I think we're skipping right past. I did not even know this was a game until you were looking around in the office for people to proof your review for it.
Yeah. Well, so are you familiar with Blaster Master?
Yes.
Okay, well, we can start there. Well, it's a remaster of that.
Okay.
So the original
Blaster
Master was a game that it had sort of Metroid-style overworld where you're exploring this world in this tank, but then you can hop out of the tank and go into these little caves. And
Great.
You're running around sort of Zelda-style, like original Zelda-style, top-down through some dungeons. Really cool concept. I don't think it's as good as either of those games, but it's solid. That was the original. This remaster puts a new skin on it, so it looks more like a Super Nintendo game now.
Ooh,
yeah, way big upgrade. And then they've added a few new boss fights, retooled some areas. If you're a fan of the original and you're like, you have a huge love of that, you will probably dig that. I don't think it holds up now the way it did like 30 years ago.
So,
It's a little bit. I don't want Blastmaster fans to like come out of the.
I don't think you have
woodwork
anything to
and
worry
rail on
about.
it.
You can say whatever you want.
It's
fine.
not as like thrilling. The platforming's fine. The action's fine. It kind of all just feels fine. A lot of the upgrades you get are slightly more powerful weapons, so there's not a like really exciting upgrades to get. You get a tank hover. That's kind of about it. I want to say.
Okay.
And then the Zelda dungeon style stuff is not as good as Zelda. It's mostly just you wandering into different rooms and killing enemies.
So if you're nostalgic
no
for that
puzzles.
game, mainly because it's, an early example of cool guy games where you can get out of a vehicle, which is
Right.
always a nice thing, and people are just nostalgic based on that criteria, then maybe go for Blaster Master Zero.
Yeah, I think only people who play the original really appreciate this at this point. I
All right.
don't think that has a lot for modern gamers.
What'd you give it?
I gave it a 7.25, I believe.
Okay. All right, there you
The whole review is on the website right now. And that's all I have to say about
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting you were jumping all over Brian Shea because his score contrasted with his lack of enthusiasm. And here you are making it sound like this is the biggest turd on the face of the earth. 7.25.
It's totally
I'm just
average,
saying-
though. Totally average. That's what I was saying. It's a very average game.
Mm-hmm.
Gets the job done.
I would have taken a bold approach and given it just a 7. I'm not
Oh,
afraid of
come
upsetting
on.
having not played it or known
Wow.
that it was a game.
Hey, getting out of the realm of reviews.
Woof.
Brian, are you ready to share some very early raw impressions of Drawn to Death on PS4?
Boy, am I.
Okay, so this game, David Jaffe, creator of Twisted Metal, God of War, the original God of War,
Calling all cars.
Calling All Cars, Twisted Metal PS3, some tweets about Gone Home. What else? No, so it's a game. They showed it at PSX a couple years ago. It has a very distinct style where it's all like punk rock sketches in a notebook. The game starts with a Brutal Legend style menu where it's like live action video of in a boring classroom, and then tilt down to like, hey, look at this crazy world, and it's a arena third person shooter.
Yeah.
Like Anarchy Reigns.
Yes, like Anarchy Reigns.
Who is that aesthetic for? Do people like that?
Is 100% my thing. Is like I understand the direction they were going for. It's supposed to be a kid in high school sketching in his notebook while he's bored in class, but man, is it not appealing.
I
Uh-oh.
have a lot of thoughts on this game. I appreciate that they effing went for it.
They sure did.
They swung for the fences with this style and this tone. I just think that it's not a great vibe. I love it's not too far from having a bold take like something like from Media Molecule, right? But just imagine that bold creative take, artistically not as successful, but then just the overall vibe is this aggressive. This game very much thinks it's funny to constantly say you suck and say F you to the player.
Oh yeah, they love curse words.
It is the exact level of maturity you might expect from one Sir David Jaffe, legendary game developer.
No, it's the level of maturity you'd expect from like a high school kid drawing in his notebook.
And isn't that the vibe that they're going for?
But he's also very, very sad.
He said, if you want to be called a spicy wank stain repeatedly and told that you're stupid over and over
What's
again.
the other one?
Yes,
Like
I do.
like puppet or something is
Very
another
good.
one.
That's
Or
very good.
and when you land in the welcome to hell, you sons of is what they say when you land on a level.
Yeah. Also, every time you eat, it repeats the same curse words over and over again. There's
Wait, what are you eating for?
you eat to regenerate your health.
Health
do you have
and
to
like
curse
energy.
about when you're eating?
Well, that sounds
It's
like
like
Zelda.
wolf it down, mother.
An announcer that and
So it's like Mad.
Yes,
World.
yes, a little bit like that. There's also an extended sequence in this multiplayer game. Brian, I would love it if you heard this too, because that means that it's more common than I thought. But after playing a couple games, there's an extended sequence where the announcer
I know what you're talking about.
says, "Oh, I'm gonna poop my pants," except as vulgar as possible, and then it's like a minute and a half of him describing how he's starting to poop his pants.
That's not what I was thinking.
Oh, and then he's like, "Oh, I gotta get to the bathroom. Oh, wait, I guess I'll just poop here." It is absurd.
There are a lot of extended monologues by the announcer during matches to the point where it's just really distracting.
What did you get?
I
Stood out to you?
got one that wasn't nearly as distracting as that sounds, but it's one where it's like, I haven't gotten work like this in 20 years. I can't believe I have a job.
Okay.
But it went on and on and on.
I noticed you didn't laugh at the poop my pants comedy, Cork.
No.
Wait until you hear this punchline.
Okay.
At the end, after he poops in the booth,
Yeah.
the announcer says, "Smells like chicken."
Oh, baby.
It's very good.
So the gameplay itself.
Wit. Yeah.
The gameplay itself I thought was fine.
It feels very floaty.
Yeah, it does.
It feels a little bit like a third-person shooter on PS2. That said, I think that the maps that I saw, not all of them, but the maps I saw I thought were really cool. I thought the map design was really great. Like there's this one, I don't know if you saw it, but it's a bunch of like rotating things, and there's like this giant pool of blood underneath. And whenever you're in blood, you have like a speed boost.
Okay.
And also, every time you die, you start basically Lego game style dropping into the environment.
Mhm.
Like
That's kind of cool.
yeah, free falling on, so you can choose where you're going to land. I think there's
Splatoon
cool.
Splatoon style.
I guess it's a
which
little bit
kinda-
like that.
It's more, I guess, like in that you can choose where you want to go and then you kind of like drop in. But like this is more like you're skydiving and then like you choose a target on the map somewhere.
manually kind of.
Yeah.
Right,
okay.
yeah, for sure. And
So-
the maps are small than I imagine too. It feels more like a Quake, like a third-person floaty Quake.
They're very small. And
Yeah.
like, so I did the tutorial, which laugh a minute.
So the tutorial's just a lot of the sketched out characters saying "F you, you're so stupid." There was a moment that I genuinely appreciated in the
See if
tutorial
it's the same one.
where it's like, okay, we haven't taught you how to reload yet.
Yep.
We want to save you time, so to reload in this game, you actually have to speak into the microphone on your controller and say the word reload. And then it has like a voice reading meter on the screen.
Weird.
And so it's like, all right. So I said reload out loud in my living room by myself. And it's like, I'm sorry, we didn't pick that up. You want to do it again? And so you say it again. And then, of course, he's like, F you. There is no mic on the controller. That's not how you reload. It's a square button. But I appreciate that kind of tomfoolery.
I actually was on to them when they did it. I was like, there's no way that's
Of
what
course,
it is.
of course.
And then I was like, I'll do it anyway, whatever. And yeah, that was a good moment. In
a
the
barrage
tutorial. Yeah.
of really rough
So
jokes.
one thing that happened with me was I got into a match, my very first match. First of all, not only was it unable to find 4 players, which, launch day, a free game if you have PlayStation Plus.
I somehow matched with one of our interns. What? We're not playing together. But
kidding?
yes, apparently we matched and he killed me. Yeah.
What is our intern doing playing Drawn to Death?
What do you think they do in their free time? They go in Minneapolis and lock themselves in their apartments and play Drawn to Death on PS4.
Not only did I not find another, like I found one other player that was playing at that time. So it was just 1v1 in this apparent 4v4 or 4-player brawl.
4 up for all, as Reeves would say.
Yeah.
That's the
So-
official term.
It was only 1v1, and then it was like, all right, first person to win 4 rounds wins. So I won 4-0, and it's like, you've reached the score limit, you win. And then I got an error message that says, lost connection to other player. So the other player left, and I didn't get credit for the win.
Oh,
Like I went back to my stats, like 0 games played, 0 wins, 0 kills.
How else are you going to unlock those skins, man?
Yeah, I was like, well, that's when I'm done playing this game.
Yeah, there are other skins. It's interesting they have a God of War skin pack, so like you can dress this rabbit character to look like
cool.
Kratos. A nice tie
Huh.
into Jaffe's past. Amazed there's no Twisted Metal stuff, but I assume that's coming. The game, I appreciate again to see a game that's a little bit like Hellblade, at least a bold take. They're going for a vibe.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
don't.
nice theme, not for everybody.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Cork. Very much so.
I don't
Okay.
want to crap all over them because they clearly had a vision and they went for it, and
Uh-huh.
and like I don't mind the gameplay. I think the gameplay's fine. But yeah, it's a very not pleasing to the eye aesthetic, and I don't care for like the crazy humor that they're going for.
I don't care for this humor. That
I do not care for. I don't go for that.
Just a second. Here comes a juicy one.
Yeah, right on.
All right.
Yeah, we got you on.
Good
Smells
stuff.
like roast beef.
Yeah, but it is free on PS Plus. It seems like they're trying to go for a Rocket League style debut for this to try and get a bigger audience. I'm curious to see who this game is for, and if you're out there and you really enjoy it,
If you want to meet one of our interns,
They're very
definitely
nice.
check it out. Anyways, that's Drawn to Death on PS4. You guys want to move on to some great emails?
I would love to.
Oh,
Yes.
boy.
And welcome back to the Game From Show. We got some great emails from the community. People sent in their wonderful questions. topics of concern, feedback.
Topics of concern.
Well, there might be a few in there.
Oh no.
Overall thoughts to podcast@GameInformer.com. We're going to read through all these emails, and at the end, we're going to choose our absolute favorite, and it's going to be unanimous as all hell. Then we're going to ship that person out something very nice from the Game Informer office here. So, you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Remember to remember, as they say. Alan Cooley says, Ben and GI Crew. So after listening to last week's podcast, I can't tell. Is Billy Mitchell really an insufferable, arrogant a-hole, or is it a persona that he feeds because people have that perception of him? At times during the podcast, he seemed fairly gracious, and other times he'd mention how awesome he thought he was, and it was excruciating. Also, I'm curious what the staff thought of the autographed collectible cards.
Did he end up autographing those?
No, I think Walter Day signed one.
Yeah,
That was it.
Billy signed a poster.
Yeah.
That's true, he did. I have that stuff stashed away for Extra Life next year.
I
So
got
if
the
you
hot
want
sauce too.
Yeah, so if you want to win some Billy Mitchell stuff, a lot of emails about Billy Mitchell and like whether or not that was all an act and what the hell was going on with that podcast.
One of my favorite moments when he was in the office was, well, first of all, when he was kind of wandering around the office while everyone else was like in a group,
A little
kind of
surreal.
getting the tour. And Billy's just kind of wandering around, looking at like the walls and like the things on the walls, and not really paying attention to the tour. But as soon as he got in the vault, like his eyes did light up.
Oh,
And
did he?
Yeah,
Oh,
he was
good.
like, "Oh, can I name a game and you find it?" And Andy was like, "Yeah, probably." And
Fetch doggy.
yeah, but when he was shooting a video with Andy, and Andy goes, "I gotta ask, how did you get a Game Informer label for your hot sauce?" And he just goes, "Well, I'm Billy Mitchell," and that was it.
My favorite part of his visit was when we were taking a group photo, and then he was the last one there, and he walked into the group, and Jeff Cork shouted, "Boo!" as he was walking into the photo. It's amazing. Just boo the man in
I forgot
photo.
about that.
Pretty good.
Just a foot from his face.
He's a heel. He loves it. That probably like made him like.
Yeah.
He's
I
very
think-
tall to begin with.
To
He
answer
is
that
very
question,
tall.
though, like I think he plays into it a little bit.
He's
I think
very
he-
aware.
He maybe is a little arrogant in real life, but I think he plays that up more than.
He's a Dan Tack type. I think we could safely say.
Now, here's the thing. Dan Tech watches and listens to this podcast.
That's why I said that.
he is going to spit out his Fresco or whatever he drinks while listening to this. He hates that
He
comparison.
does, but it's apt.
I
Whoa,
have, honestly,
Dan Tack, I do not believe that. You know I love you.
I did not volunteer this. Several people commented on that. Friends gave me that feedback of like, I kind of get it. Similar. Dan is a great guy, but if there's any overlap, it's they're both very aware of perception.
Yes.
And they think a lot from the outside in. Nowhere near. One's an S heel, one is not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not comparison, but there is something there.
They're
It totally
very
is.
self-aware
yes.
of what's going on
Yes.
and how to manipulate situations to their advantage.
Right. But Billy Mitchell, he wasn't a night and day. It wasn't a night and day situation recording that podcast with him. Like that's how he was around the office to a large degree as well. He wouldn't wear headphones because he didn't want to mess up his hair, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
fun. Anyways, Chules says, "Yellow GI Squad. Who do you think is the more talented developer, Rockstar North or Naughty Dog? And don't wuss out and pick both or say you can't choose. I veer towards Naughty Dog personally for showing more versatility with their characters, storytelling, and solid game mechanics. Thanks for your time. The mold was broken after Dan Tech." All right.
What does that mean?
All right.
I think it means Dan Tech's moldy.
They said no more.
The simple question, I like it. Rockstar North or Naughty Dog? Who's more talented overall?
Does it feel slightly unfair because it feels like Naughty Dog's been more prolific in the recent years,
Have
where
they?
we've seen more of their stuff? I feel like I haven't seen anything from Rockstar in a while.
I guess it has been a
GTA.
while.
I mean, we got
GTA 5.
Red Dead coming soon.
Yeah,
Yeah, what about, you got to factor in the social media whirlwind, as Rockstar puts it, around Red Dead 2.
right.
Where do you stand, Reeves?
I would. It feels like personal taste thing, but yeah, I would lean towards Naughty Dog as well. I feel like they've had more diversity in their lineup for everything from Jack and Daxter, Banjo, and Last of Us is still one of my favorite games of all time.
Mhm.
So I like GTA a lot. I like Red Dead, but
You're saying table tennis versus Smuggler's Run versus Red Dead? That's not enough diversity for you?
all right, well, sure, maybe not, but I do prefer Naughty Dog games.
Sure.
I
Brian.
think that I'm going to go Naughty Dog. However, Rockstar deserves all the credit in the world for what they've done with open world games.
I'm
So
sorry,
that's
you can't
wussing
couch it.
out,
Yeah,
yeah.
wussing out.
I'm
indeed.
saying Naughty Dog. I gave
You
a
can't
definitive
compliment
answer.
one while bashing the other.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
I enjoy Naughty Dog games. They're very good. However, I think I don't ever play those and wish that I could just dick around in those worlds for dozens of hours in the same way that I can with Rockstar's games. Therefore, advantage Rockstar.
I also go full Rockstar. I
Whoa.
mean, historically, GTA 3 alone is such a milestone. Naughty Dog, I appreciate them for going for it. On the storytelling front, technically very amazing, but it's very focused. Streamlined is not the best word, but they nail what they're going for, and that's a linear path. And so even if the writing in GTA games aren't exactly up to the same par that Naughty Dog is, I have to go Rockstar as well.
They're more
They
fun.
both have
Games are
strengths
more
and
fun.
weaknesses.
So
but-
it's a tie. Does Wade just a
Wade in the
two-word?
booth.
What is it?
I know where he's going to go.
You don't know my answer.
Hang on, let me write it down.
He's gonna say Nintendo.
Okay, Wade, what is it?
What is it?
Bungie.
Can I say Bungie?
No.
Between, I would go.
Oh boy, this was a mistake.
It says Wade, producer of the podcast. Yes, Wade.
I would go Naughty Dog.
Oh, what did I write
You
down?
wrote North Dakota.
Yeah. I'm really excited to talk about North Dakota. It's actually the next question. What do you think of North Dakota? Max Hubris writes in, hey, Ben and the gang, is Nintendo's current state, parentheses, clawing at success, isn't everybody? What happens when you surround a group of brilliant creators with out-of-touch business people? This is derogatory.
Wait, what? I'm lost in this question already.
Is Nintendo's current state what happens when you surround a group of brilliant creators with out-of-touch business people? No. I think that's a vast oversimplification of the complicated nature of Nintendo.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain amount of Japanese society that's tough to penetrate. A certain amount of that company is over 100 years old. I'm sure there's bizarre internal politics we couldn't imagine.
Stubbornness,
Certainly.
ignorance,
There's a lot of
/
stubbornness.
unwillingness to look at what other people are doing,
But
and
also
grow from
brilliance because of that.
that. They are
Right.
like the Galapagos Islands in all of
Yes.
its stupidity,
But also brilliance. Some people love those turtles.
and others watch as they drown in their own.
I think
I don't even know if that happens. I don't know about the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, but you think
Sure.
about, I think Breath of the Wild is a crazy turning point. I know this game gets a lot of love, but it does also feel like a victory for the younger crew, with Miyamoto maybe taking more of a step back.
Again.
Anuma not even directing this one, producing it, but just it feels like a younger crew that is more open to accepting Western design philosophies in their games. And so I feel this like is a big victory
Right.
if you're the kind of Nintendo fan that wants them to be more aware of their surroundings.
Which they've been doing that a lot lately. Like Mario Maker, for example, wasn't directed by Miyamoto and Tezuka. And
Sure.
Yoshi's Woolly World, though Tezuka was heavily involved, like they tried to shift the design of that to like some of their up and comers.
Yeah. They're making those killer free-to-play 3DS games. Steel Diver.
1-2 switch.
1-2 switch. Look, just don't bash them and say that it's just out-of-touch business people and that's everything that's wrong.
I think the
with
fact that we can get into it.
No, go.
Their inability to understand what is happening as far as connectivity in video games blows my mind. Just in fact, like they're launching without any kind of multiplayer component or like a unified account or whatever.
It's so weird to like have a friend code and then get it, put your friend in the system, and then be like, now what? I can't send a message.
nothing.
I can't communicate.
It is absurd.
It is
I
absurd.
think it does feel like they're out of touch, and maybe they are a little, but I think also they've always been very financially conservative and guarded. Like all their systems, they try to like make them as cheap as they can so that they're not losing money when they sell the system, right? They always try to have a certain amount of money in the bank. They don't take, it's weird because it feels like they don't take risks, and yet they do
That's
try
all
to
they
think
do, though.
outside of the box in a crazy ways. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, it's a weird balance, but I think that's what they're trying to do. Is they're always trying to like look at a different angle than everybody else is
Right.
doing.
And I love them for that.
Right.
It's as frustrating as it can be. And just on a side note, I don't think Nintendo, Breath of the Wild, amazing. I don't think Nintendo's gotten enough crap from the community that they should have for nerfing the Wii U version of that game by not having your inventory on the gamepad.
That is bonkers.
Yeah.
That game, it clearly is designed from the outset for a lot of inventory management, and it's designed for that gamepad. You look at like the first Wii U tech demo they showed for Zelda, it was, hey, we want you to control stuff on this gamepad. There's no way that wasn't the kernel, that entire design, for UI at least, and then to gut it just so that that version is not superior to the Switch version they released is BS.
And I absolutely love the second screen on the Wii U for inventory management in Zelda games. Like
Right.
when I played Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD, like I was like, this is the definitive way to play a Zelda game.
And there's so much time in the menu in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. And I hope to God that they would patch that in.
I don't think they're going to.
I don't think they are either. but it's a good thing to do, damn it. Mike says, hello, Ben and GI crew. Hello. As writers, I'm not a writer, what was the best editing critique you've ever been given? Not, okay, go ahead, Reeves.
I was going to say it's simple. I don't know if that's exactly what it was. The advice was, but the concept was, don't be over elaborate with your words.
Totally.
Like, say what you mean. Like, what are you trying to say here? Like, say that.
Totally.
Yeah, being concise is a really, really good
Right.
tip. Like, that's something that I still struggle with today. Like, it's super hard to like cut out words that you want to say,
Right.
but like
You
at
find
the
yourself-
end, it makes
yeah.
it a much better sentence or paragraph or article.
Totally.
Find a stronger verb rather than adding adverbs to it.
Right. You can find yourself flowering up so many paragraphs or sentences, but if you just, again, go with that frame of, what am I actually trying to say here? I always found that out. It helps so much in college. Like, do I have a point to make, or am I just rambling on here?
The problem with college is that like so many of the papers that they assign, you're like, oh, there's a 10-page requirement for this. So I ended up doing the exact opposite of that, like
Yeah.
just adding fluff for the sake of getting to that page limit. For me, I would say one of the like this isn't so much for like writing itself as much as like kind of becoming a better writer is just to like do it no matter what. Like if you're trying to get a start in writing, like I would say just practice, do it, like write for yourself, write for a small blog, write for whatever. Like when I was first starting out, like I was like, all right, I want to do this, but I kind of suck and I don't care. I'm just going to write for like a small blog and get experience. And then like I slowly worked my way up with like higher profile outlets, and you know, I got better as I got like to better outlets, you know,
Sure.
or probably the other way around. As I got better, I got into better outlets.
You know what the key to getting better is?
Practice,
Listening to
practice,
old
practice.
sages like Jeff Cork. What was the best writing advice you ever got?
Probably first and foremost, the importance of just overall presentation, and more simply put, to use some of Ben Reeves' advice, make sure you run spell check. Like I can't overstate. Right now, we're in the process of like reading some intern applications for the next crew. It is astonishing how many people have blown their shot, in my opinion, right out of the gate by misspelling the name of our publication.
There are some
etc. It gets even weirder from there. So
blatantly obvious misspellings where you're like, if you had this in Word, you'd know
it would
right away.
There'd be a.
I only write a notepad, baby.
I trust
think-
my instincts.
More crapping pants jokes.
more crapping pants
yeah.
jokes.
Yeah.
As much
Yeah.
crap as you can get in there. I will say, read more too. Like
I was just
reading
gonna
more.
say that.
All right, Cork, go for
Way
it.
to go,
You're gonna
Reeves.
want to read more.
All right, Cork, go it.
As Ben was saying,
You pick up a lot from like osmosis. Like just
Yeah.
reading more, you'll notice like, okay, that's how you string together a sentence or a thought.
Sure.
yep,
Yeah.
and read a lot of different things too. Like,
Mhm.
don't be like, I'm a sci-fi guy. All I read is sci-fi, because that will. I think the more diverse stuff you're reading and you're getting stuff from different sources, I think that will only help you.
Yeah.
And it'll
Sure.
make you a smarter person.
Organize your thoughts beforehand. Outlines, stuff like that are really important.
Yeah. Since he says editing, I'll throw video in there. Something I always forget and then relearn and then forget a bit again. But it's the classic, kill your darlings thing. But there's just going to be this quote. If you're trying to cut together a somewhat tight video feature, and imagine it's the same for writing, where it's like, oh, this quote is such an interesting nugget. I really want to include it. It makes the overall structure funky and kind of wobbly, but I need to get it in there. That is the most selfish thing you can do. You're the only one that'll know that quote is not in there, and you're worsening the piece for everybody. It's you versus the world. Give it to the
Absolutely.
world.
So when I was writing my Where Sonic Went Wrong feature,
Yeah.
the hardest thing in the world for me was to cut out the only quote I had from Miyamoto on that entire piece. I was like,
yeah.
I have a quote from Miyamoto. It's the only thing he said about this topic, and I'm going to not include it. And I ended up putting it in a different feature for like the web, but like it was still like, oh, this hurts so bad.
I was in the room when you asked that, and it was a pretty banal answer, but I totally hear you. It's like, it's Miyamoto. Like, we have to include it. That's a
Yeah.
great example. Like, there's just no point if it's a nothing.
So what did he say? Just so we know.
Well, I asked him about like his thoughts on like bringing Sonic over to Nintendo for the first time, like when Sega went third party, and
He said, I shot JFK.
it was weird.
Yeah.
And that's why we didn't put it in the article.
Right.
But he basically said like they've been talking about doing it, and then when Sega went third party, they said, well, we can do it, but we don't want them existing in like the same like universe. So we made the Olympic Games, so there's like these characters coming from different like the Mario and Sonic being in
By
the same
definition,
game.
the same universe.
Yeah, but like like it's not like Sonic is in Mario's world or Mario's in Sonic's world. Like they're coming together, like nations come together in the Olympics.
It's Sonic's world. We're just living in it, baby.
Hell yeah!
Jerry from South Texas says, "Hey, Hanson and crew, hello. Inspired by the great made-up characters like Seabass, the Lobster, and the Devil." I assume this is from the Sonic 2006 Super
Sonic
Replay,
06, yeah.
which Wade cut together a wonderful highlight reel. You should watch that.
You should
just
go
to
Oh,
see
it's
how
terrific.
effed up that game is.
Yeah, just start with the highlight reel, and
I
if you
recommend
like
it.
You should watch the whole thing.
Totally.
I think it's good.
He says, I would love to see a replay of an imported game where you guys have no idea what the characters are saying and you have to make it up as you go
Oof.
along.
I've wanted to do that for a while, actually.
Yeah.
Where we play a game in Japanese and like we create the dialogue. Yeah. So Andy actually did that with Final Fantasy VII. When he
That's
first
right.
played Final Fantasy VII, like he
Yeah.
played the Japanese version. He made up his own story.
Yeah. P.S. Also, all I want in the world now is to watch Reeves as a renegade doing fetch quests in Minnesota. #real world open world. All right,
Did we talk about that on air?
We talked about that last week.
Oh, okay.
PSPS, has there ever been a proposal for a segment or game coverage that Andy or Reiner have flat out shot down? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's usually for the greater good.
They're editors.
Yeah. It's usually when we're getting a little bit too funky.
They have good ideas.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. Let's see. Lewis from sunny Scotland. Oh, Scotland, Reeves.
Oh, hello. Hello, mate.
That was one of the ideas that Andy shot down.
Saying hello to Scotland. Hey, Ben and crew. I know a good few of the GI gang are big on podcasts, and I've spoke about them on the show before, whether it be playing games while listening or something similar. So was it difficult to jump into the GI show to begin with? I imagine going from listening to being on one would be a little intimidating. Does anyone have a podcast persona, or is every guest just entirely themselves?
This is it, unfortunately.
What you see is what you get.
Yep.
Yeah, I was super nervous because you think as a huge podcast fan, it's like, oh my God, I hope I can live up to what I like about podcasts. And the first episode of this podcast I was ever on was talking about Donkey Kong Country Returns, which was terrifying because I played that game under the influence, glug, 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 for like 2 hours. And then suddenly it was like, Dan Reichert, who reviewed the game's out of town. You have to be on the podcast and like your second week here to talk about it. And I was like, oh, okay. I just puked all over Matt
Helgeson
Helgeson.
looked at you.
Glasses down. Wake up call. Were you guys nervous to jump on the GI show?
No, I think that like
Okay, Shea.
I mean, I'd been doing podcasts for a while on my old site, but I think even like my first podcast that I did for them was like I was excited because I'm like a big fan of like talk radio and like podcasts. So I think that like I've been listening for so many years that it's like, oh, cool. Like I kind of understand the flow of this. I not that like I'm an expert on any of like how to run a show or anything, but it was like it was just a fun thing to be like, oh, I've been like non-actively participating in this by listening. So it's like it's kind of cool to have like the tables turn and now you're suddenly in charge of a show.
When you
know?
listen
Right.
to podcasts, you're talking back to them.
Well, you don't?
He laughs loudly. I understand what you're saying, right? I appreciate it because like a trap that so many podcasts fall into, and some people love them for this, some pull it off better than others, is just like embracing tangents. And I feel like if you're the cream of the crop, you can do that. But so many rookie podcasts try that, and then it's just, oh, isn't it fun that we're spending 45 minutes talking about cereal? It's like, no, let's move. So even though this show and this topic in particular might be a tangent, I like having some sort of metronome. Like, let's drip some information. Let's
Right.
go. Let's go.
Especially when you don't know anything about those people. You're like, I don't even know you people yet. I don't know if I like you enough to like listen to what
Yeah,
you
that's
think
such
about
a-
cereal.
Right.
That's such a hard
Right.
thing. Like when you jump to a new podcast, it's like, all right, they have this whole cast of characters that I now have to like familiarize myself with, and
Except for Brian Shea, because he's the master.
you never familiarize yourself with me.
the old sensei, we call him. Jeff Cork, have you ever been nervous about anything in your life?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when we first started doing the GI show, I was nervous.
I think you were on the first episode ever. I
Yeah,
went back and listened not too long ago, and it was a hoot. Talk
Yeah.
about a laugh per minute.
I bet. I was, like sweating my bees off in that tiny little hot room.
Anyways, speaking of hot rooms, Lewis from sunny Scotland also says, P.S. Ben Reeves should be on every single episode in every segment, including in the background during the interviews in the back half.
Would he like me to come over to his house and just hang out with him?
Yeah, and
I'd
just
like to
stand behind
do
him.
it.
All right, let's see. Jake Steinberg says, I'm here asking you to pontificate and meditate. Sounds like a nonsense
Can
question.
you drop the Yooka-Laylee Rap beat? Come on, Wade.
Yeah, Wade, we need the please just to help us pontificate and meditate here, if you'd be so kind. We'll wait.
We're not joking, Wade.
Okay. A little quieter. Wait. Okay. So Jake Steinberg says, what is the difference in energy when playing a handheld game versus a console? Why are some games more suited for a home console than a handheld one, or the other way around? What is different about your relationship with the two kinds of machines? And naturally, how does the Switch fit into all of this?
I thought about this a fair amount when Zelda came out, actually, because I'm like, I like playing these kind of games on TV, on my TV.
It's really hard to concentrate.
It's
with this
really
music.
hard to concentrate with this music. By the
You're
way.
welcome.
Yeah,
No,
thanks
yeah,
a
go
lot,
on.
Jeff Burke.
Keep meditating.
But I ended up playing it more in handheld than I thought.
And how does it feel different?
I don't know. Like, I didn't think I would play it in handheld, but I liked playing it on the plane.
I would say maybe more,
It's not as comfortable.
not as comfortable, but maybe more intimate in the same way. It's kind of like your marriage.
Yeah, very uncomfortable,
All right.
But very intimate.
but very, very intimate.
Shay, do you understand what they're getting at? The different energy and vibe
It does
between the two?
always feel different. Like I've always wanted like a console Pokemon, as so many people do, but like I don't know how. Like I always feel like I'm more focused when I'm holding it as like a handheld. I think it's because it's like if I put down the handheld system, like a 3DS, like the entire game is in my hands. You know, it's not like it's like it's easier to put a controller down on a coffee table and pick up my phone and like scroll through Twitter for 20 minutes in between like doing something on a TV versus like
Interesting.
a handheld. I'm usually not like sitting at a table. I'm usually like on the couch. I'm usually in bed or whatever. Just
Yeah, brother.
Tell
Playing.
me about that.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay.
Go-
Cork, do you understand what they're getting at?
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. This is the right word.
I'm sorry. Wait, could you turn it up a little bit as well?
Yeah, that was really good.
Okay, there you go. Go on, Cork. That's a great point. Okay, wait. You want to kill that, please? Did you actually have a point to make, Cork?
Yeah, I did actually.
Go for it.
Yeah, this isn't again the right word, but I feel like handheld games, in my opinion, feel like disposable in a way where I don't feel like. I feel like I'm saying I feel like a lot here.
Yeah, because
I'm
like with
getting nervous being
iOS,
on a
it's
podcast.
kind of like it's a more passive experience.
No, it just seems like that. Maybe until the Switch came out, games that have been on handheld. I'm not a huge handheld gamer. I should also state.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't typically have the same production values. They're kind of a slightly less impressive version of something that you would play on TV.
Well, now this Switch is going to blow your mind, dude.
I know.
It's going to revolution.
I know what you're talking about, though, because what was the Uncharted that came out on Vita?
Golden Abyss.
Golden
Golden
Abyss.
Abyss.
When that came out, I was like, okay, finally, a
Yeah.
game with high production values. I'm going to totally play the crap out of this.
Mhm.
I love Uncharted. I think I got halfway through that game, and I still haven't finished it. And like something about it, like it's just it feels like a handheld version of a big game.
I feel like if I'm on the road, I will just dink around with my phone if I have enough time to play something. But if I'm at home, it's like I can just take a few steps and play something on TV.
You need a game that can
Connected
be played
online,
in
like-
bite-sized chunks
Exactly.
when you're playing handheld, I think.
Right.
Not every game does that.
Very true. So Mitch says, last night I attended the first Atlanta Braves exhibition game at our new ballpark. Shea knows all about it. And during one of my trips to concessions, I happened upon a 70-ish-year-old man wearing a True Crime Streets of LA hoodie. This sort of broke my brain. So many questions came to mind. Where did this man get this hoodie? Does he know about the game? Did he play the game? Did he realize how terrible that game was? Did he work on the game?
I like Streets of LA.
He probably had a kid that worked on the game.
So my question is, what is the most out-of-place, strangest, or most obscure game-related item, clothing, stickers, tattoos, etc. that you've come across in the outside world? I agree, Cork. I bet his kid worked on the game.
Mhm.
True Crime Streets of LA. I just like the concept of true crime in the streets of LA.
Oh, are you going to tell your adventure story? The shirt? You had
Oh,
the adventure
yeah.
shirt?
I have the Double Fine Adventure t-shirt, and I went to a coffee shop, and the guy handed me coffee. He's like, oh, dude, love the shirt. I was like, oh, are you a Double Fine fan? He goes, no. I just like the concept of adventure.
He didn't even know what it was about.
Goddamn hippie. I thought I found a Double Fine fan.
Concept
I
of
just love the concept of adventure.
Yuck.
Yuck, indeed.
Yeah. I know this has happened. I'm having a tough time.
Yeah, I
thinking of-
can't think of anything right off the top of my head.
Cork, do you have a favorite piece of gaming related swag?
Well, I have one.
Oh, go on.
In terms of weirdness,
Uh-huh. He's reaching down. He's picking up something for the
picking up-
audio listeners.
this is a Bullet Storm Nutcracker.
Oh boy.
Is this in honor of the Ultimate Edition coming out?
No, this is from the original release of Bulletstorm. And this is in honor of the move, the
Nutcracker.
When you kick someone in the nards,
I think you
Right in the
shoot him in the
jaffies?
nuts,
You
so to speak.
you shoot him.
For all of you
boy.
listening at home, it looks a lot like a nutcracker, like
exactly.
one of those nutcracker things that you would see in
There you
the
go.
play.
Or
Are-
on Christmas.
are you ready for the most fun fact of the century?
Yes.
What is that?
The voice director for Bulletstorm, which featured such phrases as "I'm going to kick you in the nards" and lovable quotes like that.
Yes.
Exact same voice director as Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Because I was like, who is this person?
Well, that would
directed
explain
these
all those
voices?
"I'm going to kick you in the nards" lines from
Come
Zelda.
on. So Ian Miller says, "Are there things from real life that you want to but can't do in games?
Die.
What?" What?
Sorry, I jumped the gun.
What real life actions can't be in games or haven't yet been implemented? Thanks for being dope AF, Game Informer. Toodles.
So things you can do in real life, but not in games.
Cork, this seems like your type of question. There's always like the natural dialogue.
Mhm.
More importantly, just like, we've never made a character laugh in a game.
Never?
Never. Right?
It's true.
There's tricky things like drinking a liquid that doesn't look like butt.
Having a beard that doesn't look like butt.
Yeah.
Here's one thing that always kind of bugs me, and I'm like, why is it like this? Anytime a character goes to sleep, they always sleep on top of the covers. They never have covers over them.
You know why? It's because like that thin layer of fabric is impossible. Like I guess the hardest scene to animate or produce in The Incredibles is it's Elastigirl and she's looking at a rip in a shirt and she's like holding it in a strange way and like puts her hand through it. And I guess like just simulating the fabric was just impossible.
Yep.
So I think it's that. It's the same reason why when characters like touch each other, it's always like clipping through or not quite touching. It's just like getting that subtle interaction.
Yeah.
And weight is impossible.
I would love to play a game where a character had a sword on their back that didn't clip through their hips and backs of their thighs just with impunity
Yeah, that's a good one. Good, like in real life.
in real life.
Yeah, it's supposed to stab you in the ankles as you run.
I would
Remember even
like,
Assassin's Creed 3 at the very beginning when you're meeting the founding fathers. There's this one guy who sits down in a chair and is featured prominently in this cutscene.
Yeah.
And his jacket, he's sitting in a chair. His jacket is just like phasing through all kinds of things, and it's like the camera was purposely put there and it rotates around. It's like you couldn't have fudged it just for this one freaking moment, guys.
Right.
Kind of like along those same lines with Assassin's Creed. Like I want a game where I can walk the same speed as an NPC that you're supposed to be able to walk
Exactly
with.
the
Like,
same speed.
Like I always am like, all right, well I can either like jog, sprint, or walk slightly slower than
Yes.
the NPC.
Mhm.
And it's
Was it Red Dead Redemption where you could like click a button and you're
Yeah.
just like with them?
There are a couple
You
of
didn't
games
even
that'll
have to
let you
touch
do
it.
that. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. Every
Yeah.
game should do that.
Yeah, but usually it's like you're someone like you're trying to give someone their keys that they forgot at the restaurant or something. You're like racing up to them, and then they like go
They
over,
walk
then you gotta
over.
race up to them
Yeah.
again.
It's very natural. Zach from Tulsa, would you rather
oh,
your likeness be in a sports game, but your character always has the lowest stats in the game?
The other one.
Or your likeness be the final boss of a game that you have to kill by shouting real insults at yourself?
oh.
Speaking of reloading, and
That sounds awesome.
drawn to death. Real insults that would actually hurt you personally. You have to yell.
Oh, then
at
sports
them
game.
TV.
Sports game, yeah.
You're
Lowest
a terrible
stats.
I already
husband.
do that like in the shower when I'm alone. I'm just like thinking about things I did in middle school and yelling at
What did you
myself.
do?
You're
middle
terrible
school.
on podcasts.
Yeah, that too.
Hey, it was a Senua. What did you do in middle school though so bad?
Just stupid stuff like things that you do when you're learning how the world works.
Like
Well, there was one
Kill a
time
dog.
that I was thinking of where, so I was walking through like the hallways as you do in middle school,
My
and I
favorite.
came to the stairwell, and then suddenly, like it's a super crowded moment, a bag of ice drops out of nowhere and hits me in the back.
It didn't drop out of nowhere. Someone
Someone
wound
dropped
up-
it.
Yeah, on you.
And I had no idea how to react, so I just let out the most maniacal laugh and ran up the stairs.
what?
and you think about this in the shower?
Things like that, like stupid things like where I should have reacted differently in these situations.
How many of your showers end up you sitting down with your chin on your knees with the water running?
I
over?
just, it's like more like,
It
All
disguises
mice
the
coming out of the
tears.
shower head.
What do you look like in the shower?
Anyways, Derek from Duluth, Minnesota says, "Hey, Ben and GI crew. As a kid, my favorite game, hands down, was a Super Nintendo title called. Does anyone have a guess?
Super Mario Brothers.
Reeves, you know what we never told? Our favorite joke that no one else found funny that we were. Because speaking of rapid fire questions with Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice,
Yeah.
we were trying to come up with questions for Miyamoto and Anuma. Because we first thought it was just going to be Miyamoto for
Right.
the rapid fire questions. And so spitballing what we would ask Miyamoto, Somehow we came to this joke, and we think it's the funniest joke.
Nobody else in the office likes
It is
it.
No
not
one-
a good joke.
So the joke was, is there a third Super Mario Brother, or are you just happy to see me? And that made us laugh
I think it's really
for a
funny.
very,
That
very
would-
long time.
If you think it's funny, tweet at me. I'd love
If you
to
think it's
know.
funny, JB Jaff, if you want us to write your next game, reach out, podcast at Game Informer.
That joke is wearing a True Crime Streets of LA jacket.
Anyways, so Derek says, hands down, favorite Super Nintendo title, Evo Search for Eden. I've never met anyone else who's played this game, let alone anyone who loved it as much as my 6-year-old self did. Are there any games out there that you absolutely adore that no one else seems to have heard of? More importantly, did any of you play Evo back in the early 90s? Derek, I was so excited to get to this email. You sent it on Monday, and I've been sitting on it for 2 days because I effing love Evo.
The game is
Search for
great.
Eden. Cork, I'm
Yes.
so glad you're with me. It's Enix, Super Nintendo. It's basically 2D Spore, way before Spore.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a very simple loop of you kill other enemies, you get experience.
Yep.
With that experience, you then start out as a fish and you evolve all the way to becoming a human, but
Yep.
you replace body part bit by bit based on the experience. It's like, okay, I have enough experience here for like a
Like one of those lures, like that
anglerfish
like an
thing.
anglerfish lure.
Yeah, or like a faster tail to make me swim faster, and you just slowly, part by part, replace yourself.
Sounds crazy.
And you go through all the eras. It is crazy.
you
and
can
it's
choose to be a bird.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Wait, so what's the last animal?
The
Human
best
being.
animal, the human.
Best
The
animal.
most dangerous game.
Most dangerous game.
Yeah. So you can be a human with a big old dangle light on your head, but it's a slow.
I got another big dangle thing.
Get out
It's not on
of
my
here.
head.
But it's a grind, but I still think it's a really awesome idea.
It's frustrating that that guy who made Stardew Valley made that.
Eric
instead.
Baroni?
He should make a spiritual successor to Evo.
We don't know that he's not.
Therefore, he is maybe.
Yeah. I'm so glad you love this game too, Cork.
Yeah,
You
the
should definitely
game
look
is
it
so
up.
good. I think
put
we
a
did
gun to Tim's
was it
head
one
to
of our
make him play.
roulettes at one point on replay?
No, we don't have it in the vault because the only other person
What?
that I've heard love it outside of Cork apparently right now is a Ram who used to be on replay a lot when he was at Atlas and he's now working for Sony. Ram Jabari, Salt of the Earth guy. When he came to Game Informer for the first time and went in the vault, he's like, "Oh, where's Evo? We got to play Evo." We did not have it, and it turns out it sells for a really high price. A high price.
Well, does he own
Anyways.
it though? Does Aram?
I don't know. Maybe we
right.
should get it because it is so cool. Anyways, Kyle Ellis says, Ben and GI staff, I'm currently in the market for either an Xbox or PlayStation. You came to the right podcast, sir. With E3 just around the corner, should I buy one or wait to see what's announced? Wait.
PlayStation 4.
Well, if you're going for an Xbox, I'd say you almost certainly wait because Scorpio.
Totally, but think about like games lineup. There's going to be enough in the build up to E3 and at E3 itself where it could reshape things quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, because right now the exclusives offering on the Xbox is pretty anemic. Like, if you look at like what's already come out for Sony, like it's a stronger lineup than Xbox has for the entire year.
Really?
Yakuza, Horizon.
Oh, what's already come out. But what about on the horizon? Because no pun intended, but it's just what maybe Dreams for Media Molecule, Lost Legacy for Sony. What else is there?
There was another one that I'm thinking of that I can't.
Hellblade.
I'm blanking.
Well, Hellblade isn't Sony, but
Well, it's exclusive to PlayStation 4 though.
right.
I'm just in terms
And
of
PC.
like exclusive games, I feel like PlayStation 4 is winning this generation.
Overall, yeah.
So like if you're going to go with one system, I would lean towards PS4.
But he's
'cause I think
also
there's
wondering
more-
about like the Scorpio thing, right? Maybe that's going to
Yeah.
be so amazing. There's going to be
Scorpio
some
could
twist.
be unbelievable.
But until we see games for that thing, like, is it
Yeah.
even worth it? Like, it could be another 3DO where it's like, sure, that system was more powerful, but there wasn't anything worth playing.
Crackdown 3 is going to simulate cool stuff, but we'll see how the game
Does
is.
this guy have friends who play games? Because that should be an important factor.
That's
yeah,
a good point.
it
Actually, yeah, that
totally
was
is.
his PS. He says, I have friends that play games, but didn't
Like
say more than that.
Oh, you need to give us more info.
Like I think
Sorry.
the PlayStation 4 has the better lineup. I think it has a lot more polish in its operating system, but I think the Xbox One has a lot of really cool features that like they're still to this day getting kind of worked out. Like I still have technical issues with my Xbox One all the time, but they have gotten steadily better and like they've added a lot of new functionality that I think makes it a really cool system.
Puts the fun and functionality.
And I have more friends that play on Xbox One, so it's actually my main
Really?
system. Yeah. And plus, my girlfriend has an
Oh,
Xbox
boy,
One,
here you
Oh,
and
keep bragging.
she's the person.
You keep bragging, I'm going to put ice down your dumb neck.
She's the person I've gamed with the most, and she has an Xbox One, not a PS4, so I play Xbox One the most.
Why did you scream? I thought you were going to say you screamed and ran towards him and punched him.
He
When you just-
screamed like with a maniacal scream, like
Not gonna laugh.
like that.
Can you simulate it?
Wait, what? Like when in middle school?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
No,
we're talking about
it was like
middle
a
school.
maniacal forced laughter.
Okay,
because
like
I was
what?
trying to be like, oh, I took this in stride.
And then you ran away?
I ran up the stairs to like try to see who it was that threw the ice at me.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
That seems
okay.
like an important detail.
Yeah, like I was trying to see who it was, but also take it in stride for like the 50 people that were watching.
Was it embarrassing?
Sounds like a
It
cool
was,
guy move.
especially after the fact. It was.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian Shea, how cool were you in high school?
I was not cool at all.
Is that
I
right?
believe that.
No, not in the least.
Why?
You had glasses.
I had glasses in elementary school, and then I said, "To hell with these."
Reeves, what was the most embarrassing moment in your schooling experience?
Somebody pulled my pants down in like 4th grade.
Like
Oh.
boxers, too?
Yeah.
So
Oh my
when I was in wait, I have one
They're
of
like,
those
this would be
too.
a good joke.
So when I was in gym
And
class,
it was.
we had to run around the parking lot twice as our warm up, and I was running out in front of like pretty much the entire group, and this was like 4 classes come together, and one of the people I knew, I don't know if he was a friend or a foe. I'm guessing foe based on this. He runs up behind me and pantses me, and
friend.
Threw some ice
friend.
down your neck.
and the boxers totally came with it, and the entire class saw me. Like,
Your penis. But you say me
Your third Super Mario
and
brother.
buttock.
well, it was mostly the buttocks because I was out in the front, thankfully.
Mostly buttocks.
But then a girl ran into a truck, which was pretty awesome.
When she saw your
Whoa.
penis?
No, this was a
Oh.
separate occasion. So we ran around the parking lot. It's one of the greatest moments of my high school
All right, let's
life.
There we go. I think we're good.
Cork moved the bike
I've
away.
never seen anything like that. I got to dive into the
She,
middle of the
she wasn't
street.
paying attention where she was running, and she ran right into the side of a truck when we were running around the parking lot.
I was just thinking the other day. One time, it's something I'm not embarrassed enough about, but one time, I don't know what the hell it was. I think it was like Homecoming, King and Queen, some big event thing like that. And I was partnered up with my good friend Ashley. And we had like assemblies in the gym. And so our entire school, high school, was in this gym. And we were being introduced one by one. There were like 6 couples or whatever. And coming out from behind this curtain. And so we were the last ones to go. And I said, Ashley, you know, it'd be funny is if you got on my shoulders and we ran out that way. And she's like, okay, I guess I trust you. And so she gets on my super tall, strapping shoulders, and we walk out from behind the curtain. But I wish I could remember. They played some song that I thought was really funny as we were walking out. So basically, yeah, Alfred Hitchcock. And I said, oh, this will be funny if I dance as well as having her on my shoulder. And so I tried to dance, immediately fell over, and she like slammed onto the gym floor in front of the entire school. It was horrific. And I don't think enough about how painful that was.
That's more embarrassing for her, though.
So life dealt you
Well,
an 18
I also
and you
fell.
said hit.
What's that?
Said life dealt you 18 and you said hit me.
Right. And then hit the floor.
So I was on the tennis team in high school. And
Fine, if this is one of your long tennis stories, so help me God.
And the first year I made the team, and then the second year I had mono in the years or the weeks leading up to tryouts.
Disease.
And I was
I think I'm coming down with mono from the story.
so I was trying out, and my legs, I'd been in bed for the past 3 weeks because of being sick,
Yeah,
and
brother.
I guess I didn't have any muscles in my legs anymore, and I was running and go get a ball, and I just totally my legs gave out, and I ran right into the net.
And your penis fell out.
It's a pretty good story. I got one more. I had standing in line at lunch. Everybody's butting in front of you, so I'm with my friend. We're like, to pass the time, we start playing rock, paper, scissors.
Sure.
And then we're like, this is boring. Let's play double rock, paper, scissors.
Whoa!
And so we're doing rock, paper, scissors, and we basically realized we're just thrusting at each other for like 5 minutes. I thought it was super embarrassing.
Thrusting.
Well, because you're doing rock, paper, scissors like this.
And you dart your hips on this. How people play rock, paper,
Yeah,
scissors.
We were
Ben
playing
just-
rock, paper,
Ben
scissors
just
with
made
our-
a gesture that didn't have anything to do with rock, paper, scissors. So this is one you just need to see.
Come on, baby.
Hey, this is why you come to the YouTube.
Jesus Christ. Less you, please. Cody from Gresham, Oregon writes in and says, Dear GI panel of experts, take a second look at how far you've come and what a disaster it has been. You were once a simple fan of video games. Now you're an active part of the machine that is the gaming industry. Good Lord.
Is this a real thing?
Yeah,
We're another brick in the wall.
I'm sure you've learned quite a bit along the way. I want to know, all that preamble aside, this is a great question. What is the biggest misconception you had about your favorite games now that you have a better idea of how games are made and the people that make them? I think this is better, if I may shape this, Cody from Oregon. Just biggest misconception about the industry that you had. That once you got, on the press side, you're like, oh, this is different than I thought as a fan. I'll go. Number one, I see so many comments where it's like, why are they just showing gameplay? What the hell? Like, you do not understand that it is several people's job to line up marketing beats and how siloed and structured that is. Like, talk about this here, talk about this here. And I think we do the best job that we can on cover stories of trying to figure out what do these PR people have siloed off for later reveals? What are all the scraps and everything we can grab that is not in those fortified areas, right? That they're not talking about yet. Like, oh, we're not talking about multiplayer yet. We're not talking about this character yet. Those obnoxious beats. Just, I don't think fans realize how structured PR rollouts can be. Like, I remember on the Skyrim trip, my first cover story trip, we saw like a 45-minute gameplay demo, I think, maybe even longer. And this is like before the game was even announced. And I had cameras. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, let's just film the screen. It's like, we're not letting you do that. Are you nuts? It's like, why? Like, it looks great. Let's just film the screen. Let's go. Put it online. Like, and that is just antithetical to everything. And so PR people would dive in front of a camera lens and try and swallow the lens itself. So that's my big one.
I remember when I was a kid reading like magazines like GamePro and Electronic Gaming Monthly, and I would read previews from like 3 or 4 months ago, and it was like super positive, and then I'd read the review and it was like 4 out of 10, and I'd be like, well, they just previewed it like really positively, and then like you get on like this side of things and you're like, oh, well, it's because like when they show you this game, it's like they're showing you a really specific sequence that like they're very confident in. And also like there's almost like a thing where you have to like kind of see like, all right, well, this is just like a slice of gameplay, and you kind of have to take from that like a greater picture when you make like a preview, like you kind of have to assume a lot from like the preview that they show you. Like what if I see a 10-minute sequence in a game that's coming up, then I either like assume like, all right, well, this part is going to be similar in like the rest of the game, or I ask questions to the developer and then they give me like kind of like their spin on like what the rest of the game is like.
You need the context for where that slice is.
You don't have the like a lot of times when you're writing a preview, you don't have the full context. Like when we wrote like our Breath of the Wild previews, like one that I wrote, it was like I was writing about Rivali, who's like the one of the Guardians.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, well, he looks like a bad guy. And like, cause like the one scene, like he looks like he's just antagonizing you because he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
But like I totally wrote like the context of that was like, oh, this is like totally a boss battle, like or a bad guy.
So your biggest misconception was that you wouldn't make mistakes?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, like that, like previews,
sure.
Like sometimes like a positive preview can happen for a bad game because of the context in which that preview is presented.
It's tough to just see a slice and know what the context
is. And like I think we do our best to like say like, oh, we have these concerns for this game, but like at the end of the day, we have to go off of what we've seen.
On that note, and we'll get back to this for sure, but like Breath of the Wild, I think back to the way Nintendo was presenting that game, and like even our cover story trip where we played it and thought about it a lot, Reeves. It just is amazing to me how amazing that game is, first of all. And it feels like Nintendo was coming in on the low side of hype. You know what I mean? Like, think about, I understand maybe they didn't fully have a great perspective on the masterpiece that they had made, but in hours of interviews with Miyamoto and Aonuma, you think at some point they just said like, hey, by the way, like we made something crazy. And it's just nothing. It's just a lot of like, yes, we've worked hard.
Here's I think they're used to it.
I think when you're that close to it, I don't think they realized it was as good as it was. I think they were like, this is different. It could be, people might really like this.
I guess.
It could swing the other way on us, too.
But I just felt like
I don't think they knew.
I wish one of them would have grabbed me by the shoulders and just shove their tongue down.
This is great!
But just grab me by the shoulders and it's been like, you don't understand. Like, this is a crazy shakeup of the formula. Like, you need to understand. This is crazy.
And like, even leading up to our cover story, like they had not done a whole lot of marketing for the game. Like,
couple trailers.
Like, we had a couple of trailers, and then at the Switch reveal event, they had that one trailer that was just really good. But like, that was the first time we'd seen like anything significant in a long time. And
Yeah.
like that was the Switch reveal event right before
Right.
our cover story.
Don't get Cork started on that trailer, by the way. He was underwhelmed by it. Anyways,
Really?
but Cork, did you have big misconceptions? Do you remember?
I thought
before
I'd play more games.
That's
The
true,
Office.
yeah.
And instead, what do you do?
You tell me, baby.
Police abuse forums. No.
Yeah, just a lot of writing, a lot of like Reeves and I work with the interns, so a lot of doing that, a lot of
Yeah.
proofing other people's stories, a lot of
Sure.
talking to people on the phone.
That would be mine too. I think, especially in journalism, I thought it was like all playing games and then writing about them, and
Yeah.
like it's way more writing heavy / interview prepping for features, and like there's some game time in there, but not as much
Yeah.
as I thought.
Yeah. Also, another big one is just I don't think people appreciate how much devs kill themselves to get these games done.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
amazing games. God, I forget what the exact context was. We did a feature a while back on the opening of Metal Gear Solid 4, like the live action commercials and that stuff. And I remember the guy who produced those videos, he had a good line where he just said, like, yeah, nothing amazing is ever made without people burning a lot of weekends and a lot of overtime. Like, always appreciate that. Like, the crunch time for these games and the current working environment, as far as I understand it, in game development is just brutal and nearly impossible.
Yeah, real quick, I would say that I have learned almost immediately because I like was talking to somebody in an interview. I said, "Hey, do people do something like this because they're lazy?" And someone was
Right.
like, "Don't ever say that."
Yeah,
And I
that-
realized
Oh, yeah.
people who make games, they make decisions that from the outside look lazy, but that's one word that I will almost never use. Just because decisions are made that are difficult, but I don't
Yeah.
think you find anyone that works
Yeah, if you say a game is
in
buggy
game development.
Yes.
or bad
Yeah.
in any way, like it's not like the developer was not lazy or anything. There's a lot of other factors.
They're
Yeah,
aware
there are
of it.
so many
Yeah.
factors. And like that's the thing that I think a lot of people have misconceptions about outside of the industry, like is that, game developers who make bad games are lazy, and it's totally not the case.
I mean, it ties into the larger debate. Jeff Cork and I know it very well. There's still a avalanche of comments on YouTube saying Sean Murray from Hello Games, No Man's Sky, they're liars, they're robbers. Like the idea that no, that was coming from a very sincere place. Terrible messaging, terrible PR, but that's a sincere place. They're talking about, hey, this is the game we're trying to make. I think we're going to pull it off. They didn't pull off everything they said, but they weren't lying.
I mean, some of that was said before, like it was in the game and they were
100%.
working on it. They're like, we want to do this thing. I think
right,
they were very upfront.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very.
It was
very
not
messy.
malicious, and people took it as malicious.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. Anyways, a couple of quick ones. Tracy says, hey, Ben and GI crew. First, I have to let you know that my husband is a big fan. I hate you.
Okay.
And listened to the podcast for years. Over the last few months, I've listened to and have to say that I look forward to watching it all the time. Thank you. And then Tracy says that her favorite is Super Replay Showdown. My question is, will we be seeing the 2017 season of Super Replay Showdown where editors compete? Not as you might imagine it. We're going to do something fun, but I think this is going to be a different year as far as I understand it.
We're not calling it Showdown, right?
I don't know. I doubt it. Chris Kochin?
Here you go.
coaching.
Kookaroo Korok says, Yo, Hanson, what happened to Test Chamber? Was it not successful? Were they too hard to put together? Were you and Wade not fans of the format? The people demand to know. Brolio was also wondering about Test Chamber. That's a great question. Starting, I think, this year, maybe? A couple months ago,
It was
at
a
least.
couple months ago.
Yeah, we thought we needed to shake up the Test Chamber formula a little bit, so still kind of like in a trial phase. We're trying this format called 4 Things to Know, which is like our definitive look at a game. So that's kind of sort of in the vein of a replacement, but
It's a much
nothing's
more
locked
focused
down.
approach.
Right. So we still want to take long form looks at games, still like first hours, extended looks, stuff like that. We're going to be streaming more. So kind of sort of the end of Test Chamber, but that format isn't necessarily dead.
And if you have feedback, send it our way.
Podcast@gameformer.com. What's your guys' favorite?
I like the what you didn't know about the industry.
I like that one
That
too.
was a good
I like that
discussion
one, too.
anyway.
I also like the punchiness of Naughty Dog versus Rockstar.
It was punchy.
Yeah.
Unfortunate you guys punched the wrong direction. Cork, what do you like, sir?
Yeah, I like the misconception.
I do
one.
too.
Yeah.
All right, that's Cody from Gresham, Oregon. We'll ship you out something real nice, Cody. Thank you so much. And for now, next week, Game Club. Reeves.
right.
Mass Effect Andromeda.
Going up through.
The end of the Hunting the Archon
All right.
mission. So it's covering the planets of Old and Kadara and all side quests and all that stuff up until that point. So that's going to be next week. Also, talked to him this morning. We're calling him the Wolf from Pulp Fiction.
Oh,
Give us the Wolf, man.
give us the Wolf Man.
Joe Juba is going to be joining us for the second episode.
Whoa.
He's not going to spoil the ending, but I feel like that Game Club needs a punch of an expert, and Joe has poured so much time into that game. Reeves, what do you think about that?
That's a crazy man. What do I think about him playing the game?
About joining us for the second episode?
I think it'll be great turn of events because he usually ditches out on a Game Club halfway through, and so joining it halfway through is a nice change.
Now he's doing the opposite. By the way, just because I feel guilty, I feel like we went on a lot of tangents this episode, and I'm sorry because we also talked about the benefit of not going on tangents on podcasts. So I am aware of that paradox, everybody.
That's all I was thinking about.
Were you really?
When
Oh,
Brian
I'm
was
sorry.
talking about showing his penis to everybody. It's like, here we go. This is what people
I
want.
will say it's the QA portion of the show. You can get a little crazy.
Yeah, but something not crazy, the development of Yooka-Laylee. So for now, stay tuned if you want to learn more about the development of Yooka-Laylee and also what it was like inside Rare back in the glory day of Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooie, all that stuff. So stay tuned for an interview with Gavin Price. Gavin Price, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we are very close to the release of Yooka-Laylee. How are you guys feeling at this point?
Well, we're all nervous wrecks. It's been a long 2 years. We've seemed to have done a lot in that time, but we're very excited to see the game finally get in a lot of people's hands beyond the Kickstarter backers as well. And I hope it gets into the hands of people beyond Kickstarter backers. Otherwise, we'll quickly be winning back to Kickstarter to those same guys.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned 2 years. This is the big takeaway for me looking at Yooka-Laylee, and it's weird to, from a distance, praise a game's production, but it seems like you guys, more than most other Kickstarter projects, it feels from the outside at least that it was a pretty smooth development, did not take too long, no big obstacles, no crazy huge disappointments for fans along the way. Does it feel that way on the inside as well?
I guess we're kind of pretty proud with how much we've got done, and we're seeing some game times coming in from some of the reviewers, and it seems to be like late 30 hours for some who are, pretty familiar with the platform genre. So yeah, we're really chuffed to have built a bit of a beast of a game with an average of, I think, 15 people over 2 years. It's incredible. I think the key takeaway for us is there's got to be a positive to being old and experienced, and that's it. So we're no longer young anymore. We've no longer can get up out of bed in the morning without feeling our backs go, but we can actually we still know a bit about 3D platform development, thank goodness.
And are you still burning the midnight oil? Or are you guys working reasonable schedules? Just everyone has the experience at this point just to crank this thing out pretty quickly?
We usually end up working beyond core office hours just because everyone wants to push and make the most of the time we've got. We've got a pretty rapid development structure. We're really open, and anyone can quickly jump in and try something, and we shut down stuff that isn't working pretty quick as well. So we've got a bit of a term called failing forwards fast, to find stuff that works best and concentrate and double down on that. We've not killed ourselves doing this, although some of us became fathers during this process, and that on top of making game dev means most of us are a lot grayer and plumper around the waist than we were at the start of the game. But I don't think any of us would have it any other way.
Yeah. Do you have any advice to other developers out there that are trying to tackle a big Kickstarter initiative? Big lessons you learned along the way that you think it's key to stress?
Yeah, don't promise to sign so much stuff. We spent a day signing 1,200 manuals, all of us. And there's probably a bit of a difference between the signatures at the start of the day and the signatures at the end of the day, where our hands have just like cramped into these awful pain-ridden claws. But yeah, that's definitely one of them. Be careful on what you promise physically, goods-wise. That's at the end of the day, we're just game devs. We just like to concentrate on what we know best, and having big shipping and logistics problems isn't. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Well, hey, are you sick of going back in time and talking about Rare overall?
No. We're really proud of our time there throughout the full career. Nintendo era, Microsoft era, we learned a lot, and I think Playtonic's kind of built on the best of both worlds of that experience, really. And for myself, I think I joined Rare and I was 19, so I was very I went in a very young, naive, didn't know anything about not just games or the industry or life at that point, and I guess I learned a I learned a lot about life and games whilst there, and I grew up as a person. So no, as a period of time, it's got a warm place in my heart.
So what percentage of your team has worked at Rare at some point in their lives?
Let me just have a quick look over the tops of the desks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd say about 85%-ish.
Oh,
roughly.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and even there's even people like who haven't worked at Rare, have a fiance at Rare, for example, or friends at Rare. A friend of a friend got in touch when we were looking to fill a position. So there seems to be quite a lot of a Rare connection, even between the non-Rare team members. But I think we ended up with so many ex-Rare staff purely from a point of we knew what game we wanted to make, and people were passionate about making this game, and it helped build a team when people you've worked with in the past you can trust and just get them in without having to go through a long hiring process. And that's another thing that helped us get the game done so quick, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're 19 years old and you start at Rare, what's your first day on the job like? What really stood out to you?
The very, very first thing is when you've had your allocated car park space and it's quite far away from the front of the building, unlike people who've been there a while. And as you walked up the car park, it was unbelievable. You just looked over and the cars just got better and better and better until right near the front door you're walking past Ferraris and Lamborghinis and you thought, wow, this place is fantastic. And it was just a wonderful, magical place. It was kind of like 6 or 7 mini companies in one. The way the teams operated back then, they were very much secretive and hidden away from each other. It was bizarre but wonderful, and for me it felt like a story Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, going in and seeing what was going on the inside for the place that you've dreamt about wanting to know all those years.
Yeah, so which silo were you put in then? What was your first project there?
First of all, I got in at testing QA. I did a good year and a bit of testing, so it was on Jet Force Gemini.
Oh, wow.
And I seemed to join at a point in time when I don't think Rare kind of planned as a business we should spread our releases out like a normal company would. They just always said when the game is great and ready, it goes out. And so I joined. I tested Jet Force Gemini, then Donkey Kong 64, then Perfect Dark, all within the space of I think 5 months. I probably didn't see any friends or family for that time. We really did put a lot of hours in, but it was such an exciting time, such a privilege to be there. It was amazing. In the end, it was after that period, I kind of guess I moved on and became a designer, joined the Banjo team.
Oh, wow. Okay. So going back a little bit, with QA, multiplayer, and Perfect Dark, how broken was the game when you first started testing it, or was it fun out of the gate? What were those sessions like the earliest multiplayer QA?
Yeah, it was in a pretty good state, to be honest. But it was testament to the game that when you were testing it, you forgot you were testing it, and you just took it way too seriously and tried to win and beat everything. And especially because we all had our faces put in, and it was like, yeah, I want to shoot him. Look, there he is. No, it was great fun. Yeah, I always remember being affected by the slow-mo multiplayer challenges when you had to play a challenge in slow motion. When you started driving home after playing a game in slow-mo all day, you kind of felt the effects that still, which was kind of dangerous when you're behind the wheel of a car. Yeah. That you think the world's in slow-mo, but no, it was lots of fun. Lots of fun.
I feel like everybody who played Perfect Dark multiplayer, especially with 4 players, was a little bit of a tester in their own way, because I feel like everyone's like, well, I'm just going to line this building with remote mines, detonate it. Let's see how low this frame rate can drop. How much did you test it back in the day on that front? How much did you try and break it? Do you remember doing anything crazy to try and break that game?
Yeah. It became a game in itself. Let's see who can break the game. And we always, on every game, not just Perfect Dark, it was always really fun to see who could get a real big reaction from the developers of like, oh no, how on earth has this guy done this, or oh what? And I remember certain bugs that you could keep repeating over time really affected the game. I remember on Jet Force Gemini, for example, on the swamp level, there was a waterfall in the game. I thought, this is fantastic. And waterfalls on the N64 back then were not really seen that often. And they'd particularly done this really cool one. But I could walk off the waterfall and get the camera in such a position to look through the different layers of transparency, and it would just crash the N64 every time. And for weeks, I remember one of the lead designers on that project saying, "Oh, I fixed that bug. You're not going to do it this time, Gavin. You're not going to." And I did, and I did, and I did. And he said one week, he said, "You're not going to do it this time." And I walked into the level, and there was no waterfall there at all. And I thought, "Oh no, I've made the game worse, but the bug isn't there." I felt really bad about that.
And it shipped without a waterfall then?
Yeah, the
Oh.
waterfall got taken out. Yeah, and in the end, there's just this little paddling ramp of water going down to a pool where the camera can't get stuck in behind it or anything. And I always felt a bit guilty about that. But hey, he fixed the bug and the game went out.
Yeah,
with
I
one less bug
guess
in it.
so. So what was the biggest quirk for developing for the Nintendo 64 back in the day?
Oh, the biggest quirk. I guess for the period I was there, they were trying to push the expansion pack at the time as well,
yeah.
and it was like trying to figure out what could run with and without it. So we had to test quite a few of the games with different configurations. We were also trying to push the kind of the hot swapping aspect between Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. And I remember even Donkey Kong 64 internally, it once got to the point where you could get the ice key out of Banjo-Kazooie and trigger something happening in Donkey Kong 64 as well, and I think one of the testers has legitimately got rid of the ice key in his Banjo-Kazooie cartridge in a way that never saw release. So if I could hunt down him, I would steal his copy of that game.
Interesting.
It must be worth something now.
Wait, can you explain that a little more? I don't understand what that is.
Yeah, so on Donkey Kong 64 on the test version, it would see if it could read the ice key from Banjo-Kazooie, and we had to test it at one point, and so the tester put in his copy of DK64 after hot swapping it quickly from Banjo, and sure enough the ice key appeared in DK64 from his Banjo save game, and he used it in DK64 and triggered something cool, and he was like, wow, it works, this hot swapping works. And then unfortunately, as we all know, it kind of got vetoed, I think, by Nintendo at some point because they didn't quite like the idea of people having to rush to pull out cartridges and ram another cartridge in the machine.
Right.
But we tested it at some point, and it really did work.
So what would it do in the game then? I don't understand. Just to let you get into a secret area that was designed, or just shatter the game in a strange way?
No, as I remember, there was I think in DK64 there was just going to be an extra gold banana, so you could get a higher total than anyone else in an area locked away behind a door requiring the ice key.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think Banjo-Tooie had grander plans for the hot swap mechanic.
Yeah. Was that expansion pack for the N64 divisive? Do you remember a lot of debate amongst developers about having to make two different versions of the game? And does it remind you at all of the new era of the, Project Scorpio and PS4 Pro?
I think it was probably from the developers. Everyone was just excited to have more power. Probably the similar with modern day consoles. Everyone's like, "Yay, we can do more stuff." It's more of a quandary, I guess, for the business people to say, "Well, that sounds great, but we don't want to create a divided market for ourselves." So I'm on the developer side. I was like, "Yeah, this is great. This is cool fun." The problems for the business guys, they should have been developers.
So when you started on Banjo-Kazooie, then how much research did you do into the genre? Was it just you guys had a great base knowledge of making platformers in general, or was it a situation where you all went and just sat down with Mario 64 and played it again and again to dissect everything about it before you started on Banjo?
So myself, I joined the Banjo team right at the end of Tooie, so I kind of missed the original group, but I grilled them long over this, and I remember at the time Mario 64 was a big influence for them. They were going down a different route with a non-Banjo game at some point called Project Dream.
Right.
And then when they saw Mario 64, they were just like blown away by it and what it was doing, and they thought, all right, we've got to do that. And I know the fact that they were inspired by Mario 64 took Banjo, especially with textures, to the next level. I think that kind of influenced Zelda Ocarina of Time, because I think Nintendo saw the results we were getting with Banjo, and they went back and started redrawing a lot of Zelda based off what they'd seen Banjo-Kazooie, which I think is pretty cool. I'm not sure if that's massively well known. But then Banjo-Tooie, the team just really wanted to expand on everything before, and I think at that point in time, bigger will always seem to be better for sequels. I think people don't really think like that anymore, but at the time it was definitely make Banjo-Tooie a bigger game, open up the hub world, and have this really large adventurous area. I remember that being a thing.
Yeah. How would you define the difference in Rare style of 3D platformers versus Nintendo's? Was it an overall British sensibility or just a cultural sensibility within Rare that was pushing things in a different direction?
I think it was. I think at Rare, every game they ever made was kind of the DNA of the people behind it. You literally saw their thoughts, humor, and creativity just pushed straight up on screen. There was never any barrier or green light process or anything getting in the way to stop people doing that. So it was a really nice, true reflection of the people at the time, their sense of humor, their take on the world. And I think, more so than Mario, which kind of had a settled design ethos to achieve and take what people loved about him in 2D into 3D, whereas for people at Rare, it was more of a case of, right, we can think about this from the ground up for ourselves and create characters and worlds that fit what we want to do ground up without no pre-existing rules. I think that's what made it really exciting for the teams back then, that they were just left and with all that trust to get on and do whatever they want, and as long as it became quality, it got released.
Yeah. So that's the Japanese and British side of things. What did you think about what the Americans were doing at the time? Did you guys look at Crash and Spyro? What was Rare's views on those platformers in that era?
I don't think we did much looking over the fence at neighbours at all. One of the things Tim and Chris Stamper, I think, were actually, I think it came from them. They're actually big advocates of not, I wouldn't say not caring what anyone else is up to, but not being channeled into thinking like anything what you may have seen elsewhere, to retain your uniqueness and your own perspective on things, of how things were going. So there wasn't so much looking around and checking what everyone else was doing at all going on.
So what were the best bits of Rare's culture that you tried to bring forward with the new company now?
I think it's like develop a team where there's no design doc to follow. If you've got something to say, it's a conversation that occurs, and anyone who within earshot can be part of that conversation. We don't try and define exactly every element of the game 2 years before release. We say, hey, the first thing we have to concentrate on is getting this element nailed, which is normally character control and moveset and the feel, and then we build all other components out from that, so it all feels aligned, and everything that follows was built to the spec of the core fun that the game originally had. We just have a way of trusting each other as well. So, character guys, when they do a character and are passionate about it, I don't go over that. I wouldn't dare go up to anyone like Mark Stevenson, Kev Bayless, or Steve Mayles and say, "Well, that character looks rubbish." They're the guys who decide, what they're doing looks great and fantastic. And
Snake wearing pants. Yeah. Well, I never. This is outrageous.
yeah, all that kind of stuff. You can just trust them. Same with like the musicians, Grant. Although I do like to send Grant some fake feedback from Steve Mayles just to wind him up every now and again, and that's hilarious because he goes straight back and he starts insulting Steve and all his characters, and he has all this built-up aggression for whatever Steve's been doing, but that's just more like playing a game during development.
Sure. So without design docs, I don't understand how that can't lead to confusion. Is it just daily meetings over and over again? Is the office just so small that everyone knows what everybody else is up to?
Yeah, I mean, we have a tiny office. We could just go and sit down, and it's kind of like we always cross a bridge when we need to cross it, and everyone just gathers, agrees on what we're doing to move it forward, and then everyone goes away and gets it done. It's really liberating early on. I think if you were designing everything all up, when you get to some kind of ad hoc opportunities that could crop up during development, you're not in a position to take advantage of them because you've already said, actually, we've got the next 18 months all defined already. There's no room to schedule it in, and we're kind of like not anti-schedule, but we're kind of like would rather creativity define the design process, not fitting a schedule or getting stuff nailed down early. And honestly, I don't think I've ever written a design doc in my life where everyone actually ended up reading it. People just come over for conversations, and they normally bring new ideas and fresh perspectives with it too. So yeah, it's just a better fit for us. And hopefully, if everyone loves Yooka-Laylee, for example, it's kind of validates that approach for us.
Yeah, for sure. So when you guys are setting out to design a modern 3D platformer, but heavily inspired by the N64 era, how do you balance that fine line between modern conveniences versus having that throwback feel? What was the tipping point? What were the discussions where you're like, that's convenient, but I don't think that's what nostalgic fans want?
Yeah, there's certain things like tonally regards the game. We think, all right, that's still a good fit for us. I love the gibberish speak, for example. I think it's great. I think it's like reading a book. You can inject, as the end user, some of your own thoughts into what a character is and how they might sound like and react in certain situations, because you haven't just given the player the complete answer by giving them voice acting and mo-captured animations.
So you're saying when you're reading a book, you'd prefer to hear that Rare speak the entire time as well? Just throughout all of Moby Dick, just the entire thing going?
Yeah,
I understand.
that'd be great, right? And then we went back and played a lot of our own back catalogue and stuff, and we just kind of saw what elements are still important, what feel right. And then I guess just as being gamers ourselves across any genre, we kind of understood there's these things going on that's not necessarily just limited to platformers that people seem to really love and appreciate these days. And we should take the best of both worlds basically and bring it together. Things like we made this game a lot less linear than it was before. Players can take things at their own pace. A difficulty curve which is a lot more friendly for people, but it's still got a lot of challenge in there too. That players, it's all placed off the beaten track, which will mean naturally the more skillful players will go and find that stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. We're trying to. Okay, go for it.
Oh yeah, I'm just wondering what are some of the things like I think a lot of the Double Fine Adventure documentary. I don't know if you've seen that, but when Double Fine was trying to make a modern adventure game, there were so many discussions and debates about like what was fun about puzzles. Were those always a pain in the ass? What were the biggest elements of 3D platformers back in the day that you think have not aged well, that you're trying to downplay while still maybe having there in some spirit?
Yeah, I think it's all for me, it's the difficulty curve and the whole notion of, someone's paid their money. If you literally cannot get past a challenge in the game, you're not going to be able to do that. And we always thought this time around, more people should be able to play through the game and complete it. And this stuff, there is going to be players who want these really difficult challenges. We've got them in there too. And there's rewards for doing that. But we should embrace the fact that people want to buy your game and enjoy it and should see as much of it as possible without having any buyer's remorse. So that's a big thing for me. And also we've delinearized the game a bit as well, with the way people can buy moves in certain orders, choose to expand levels in different ways and progress through the game and see different things before other people in different orders. We think it makes the whole game more replayable, and people will see and find more content on their own terms, really. And hopefully that's something they appreciate, that goes in, and we're not forcing them to do things how a designer likes to set something up in an evil way and catch every player out. And we're watching the videos on YouTube ourselves, laughing at someone buying all the time at a certain point, thinking, yes, job done. There's hopefully a bit less of that this time around.
Yeah, for sure. What were the biggest questions that the team had during development where you're like, God, I don't know if fans want this or they want this? What were those big debates along the way?
I guess like the common things we saw cropping up on forums all the time was level size, and so that's pretty much one of the key drivers behind level expansion mechanic we had. We knew some players loved the more smaller focus levels of Kazooie, and we knew just as many players equally loved the more expansive worlds of Tui and the bigger navigational challenges they presented just by naturally being larger. So we came up with the worlds, why don't we start the worlds off small, and then as and when players feel like they've got the lay of the land and are comfortable with that, they can expand the world. And if a Tui fan wants to expand the world early on, to them they're creating a big, huge world just like they like. And a Kazooie fan, they can start the game off smaller. And then when they want to, they can expand the world, and it'll feel like getting a second, smaller version of that level. So it was great to hear fans discuss things like that because it gave us creative challenges to fix things. And there was the picking up of pages. We knew in Kazooie, some fans loved the happy little dance that Banjo did when he collected a Jiggy. And on Tui, that was removed. And so you could just collect a Jiggy and carry straight on, and the Jiggy would just end up spinning around the character. So there was no pause in gameplay. And again, that seemed to divide fans pretty much 50-50. So into this game, we put an emote system in. So when you collect a pagey, you can stop, you can trigger a dance or a happy emote for Yooka-Laylee if that's what you want. And if you don't have to. You can just carry on and do as you were, or speedrun the game.
Nice. How what was the roller coaster of confidence throughout this game's project, or the entire project overall? When you started out, I imagine you felt really good getting all those fans rallied. Was there a valley of despair at any point in this game's path?
I don't think so. I think after so long not making a game like this, we were all just so happy and enthusiastic to be doing this, and that just kept driving us forward. That gave us tons of energy. We had all this pent up passion and creativity for this type of game that in a way it's kind of sad to end it, but in a good way. You know, there's sequel potential there, I guess, already within the office that we're thinking about. So yeah, no, it was a real positive, happy development period.
This is, and I was just playing it recently, and my big takeaway is it must be so bizarre because you were in your early 20s working on these types of games back at Rare, and the audience was all ages, right? But I'd imagine there's so many people that are so nostalgic about these 3D platformers when they played it when they were like around 10. And there's just something so sweet, but also bizarre about like, yeah, we were in our 20s making this game that we're really nostalgic for. You guys were, 10 and under playing it, and you were really nostalgic for it. Do you feel like you have the same love and the same appreciation for these games, or do you appreciate it more technically and they appreciate it more emotionally?
That's a good question. I guess never really thought of it like that. For us, even as we've got older, I think we have come to appreciate making this type of game more, having been on the journey we've been through, and spending time away from making games like this and the way we made games like this as well. But coming back to it, it has felt just so much fun. We don't really grow up very fast anyway in this industry, most of us. We're still big kids at heart. We'd like to still think we were younger and fresher than we were. Unfortunately, we're not. But mentally, I guess you kind of do feel it. It hit us hard, actually, and it was only near the end of the game when someone said, "You know what? All of us 3D platformers are now retro." Like this is seen as bringing back a retro game in many people's eyes, and we're like, wow, when did 3D become retro? And it kind of, that fact, hit us, and we're like, yeah, well, think about it. It's 15-20 years since games like Mario 64 and Banjos and Donkey Kong 64s, things like that. But we don't. It's never really felt retro at all in terms of any point in time throughout Yooka's development. We never really felt like we were making a retro remake. We always felt like this is the game we'd actually have been making by this point in time if we'd have carried on, and this is the kind of things we'd be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that you're at the end of the game's development, the end of the long road, is there any way, or are there any discussions about you guys playing the game then thinking, this is as good as Banjo-Tooie, if not better? Like, is there any frame of comparison in your mind for what you guys have actually made here?
You know what? No, I think we're the worst self-critics. Myself and quite a few others, I think we're always striving perfection, and a few of us can't see anything good about the game at all. We just see the imperfections, and we're thinking, I wanted more time to sort that out, or change that, or do that. And this time during development, it goes so fast. We're not really massively reflective of the game as a whole from start to finish. We're just looking for the next thing that happens with it. That's now you've got me thinking of it live as well. Now I'm thinking, hang on, should we be more like that? But no, we've always had kind of confidence in each other and what we're doing is right. And when we did the toy box, we got a huge wave of positivity from that as well, and people playing the game at shows. So I guess the most important thing for us was not to have it compared to games in the past, but to make sure we were delivering on our promises to our Kickstarter backers, where we said, this game is going to be like this. I think it was important that they saw the campaign, and the end result was exactly what was promised. That was probably on our minds quite a lot.
It seems like, you guys have pulled it off and are in that upper tier of Kickstarters fulfilling basically exactly what fans were hoping for. There's so many disaster stories along the way. So congratulations on actually, in theory, delivering to fans exactly what they want, man.
Oh, cheers. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Kickstarter. I've backed quite a few projects myself, even before we started Playtonic up. And I always knew, I kind of guessed what I appreciated from the companies that were delivering the projects I'd backed, that I understood the process from the mindset of a backer. So I think that helped a bit as well. But yeah, fingers crossed every single backer is a happy backer come April the 11th.
Yeah, for sure. So what does the future look like for you guys? You mentioned the team is excited about a sequel. You guys aren't burned out on Yooka-Laylee at this point?
No. You know what? We've not decided a single thing as of yet, and I think there's still a bit of love we want to show for Yooka as well. I think gone are the days when a game comes out and you kind of forget about it. I think there's always chance to put a few nice little surprises in there and a few little delightful moments still within Yooka. And then for us, we better get our thinking caps on quickly and decide what we want to do next. We've always said we want to build this Playtonic universe and have different games in different genres. So we've got to see how that all fits together. We've got the storyline in Yooka-Laylee is really the start of this wider good versus evil story that's going to occur through the Playtonic universe. And if you've played Yooka already, you'll be familiar with one of these elements that has kind of a bit of power over the universe. And
hang on a second, Playtonic universe? Can you explain this? I don't understand.
Yeah. So every game we do is actually going to be in the same universe. All the characters that you meet, even NPCs in Yooka-Laylee, some of them are lined up to star in their own games in future. They're not necessarily always going to get on, and who's good, who's bad might not be quite so clear cut. But yeah, and there's this going to be longer meta narrative story going across all games for people to follow, as well as hopefully good stories in the games themselves with good starts and ends to them.
Is this based partly on Banjo appearing in Diddy Kong Racing, or is it more just like, that's the universe now? Everyone like Marvel, DC, you have to build up this larger shared experience.
Yeah, so for us, it's the shared experience Marvel kind of approach, but it's born from this creative passion that we always wanted and thought, looking back at all the games Rare did in the past, we kind of thought it's a shame, missed opportunity that they weren't meeting up with each other in future and discussing different things happening across each other's games, as well as creating some fantastic multiplayer large roster games that there's lots of different games out there which bring a lot of characters together, and you can see them all fighting each other in different scenarios. So we've got our hopes to do games like that in future as well.
Yeah. So compare your love for 3D platformers of yesteryear versus 3D shooters like Perfect Dark. Is that just the gritty side of Rare and you don't have as much love for it, or are those about equal in your mind?
Oh, we're trying to make me choose children here.
I need you to choose those children.
So I as a gamer, I've always been defined by the SNES era myself, and I remember back then I didn't even think of games as being different genres. I just thought, this is a great game and I'm doing this, and in another great game I'm mechanically doing something different. So that's the way I kind of think as a gamer. So I'm not blindly in love with a single genre more than the other. I just love great fun content, and I guess that's what's going to help us guide us going forwards with what we do. But the way we're creating this universe and the routes we're putting in place don't necessarily present us going into different art styles and different tones in different genres if we wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, with Time Splitters kind of falling by the wayside, it certainly feels like there is a market out there that's hungry for that nostalgic shooter experience, console shooter experience, I should say.
Yeah. I'd be surprised how often we get requests by people. Now we've been doing a 3D adventure platformer revival. I think we're getting a name for ourselves as the company to go and ask to do someone else's franchise and IP and revive that all the time as well. We get that quite a lot. And honestly, I think we'll be focused and concentrating on our own brand new IPs. But I think there's a lot of missed opportunities out there for a lot of IP holders to, if they're not listening to what their fans are saying of those games, then maybe other developers will and help deliver those experiences.
Yeah, well, it's exciting to hear you guys are looking into other genres as well. I think fans are going to be intrigued by that.
Yeah, I hope so. Like I say, we want to test ourselves in many different genres. I can't say more. I might give. I'm notorious. I'll just put the cat out of the bag, but I'll shut up there.
All right, that's fair. Well, hey, congratulations again on nearing the finish line for Yooka-Laylee, man. Congratulations to the team.
No, thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you. It's been lovely.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy the feedback. And thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next Thursday, and we'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.